Welcome to today's special called school board meeting. Today is Thursday, January 19th, 2023. We have this special called meeting at the Westside Elementary School, 800 West Main Street, Smithfield, Virginia. Again, today is Thursday, January 19th, 2023. The time is 3:30 p.m. and we are preparing students for college, career, and life. So we will start with a call to order. Excuse me, we'll go with the roll call.
Okay. Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Wooster,
Present.
Mr. Colick,
Present.
Mr. Marsh,
Here.
Mrs. Tynes.
And next is the approval of the agenda. Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, the clerk will take the vote.
Mr. Wooster,
Yay.
Mr. Colick,
Yay.
Mr. Marsh,
Yay.
and Mrs. Tynes.
Yay.
And folks, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, including those that are watching at home during the live stream. We are meeting tonight to discuss several different issues. I think the one that most people are concerned about is IIA. We told you on the first meeting that we would be listening to citizens' comments, and we're taking that to heart. So we're going to be talking quite a bit about that tonight. And so I do want to thank everyone that came out last week to give us your feedback, to let us know what your thoughts were. And tonight, if you can listen in and see what our intent was, and then hopefully we can get to a place where the community can get behind a single policy that works for everybody. But again, I'm not going to go on too much because this is a work session, and we'd like to get through the work so that everybody can get home. So we're going to continue, and the Vice Chair will lead the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
So the first topic we're going to discuss tonight is going to be the capital improvement plan. So I'm going to ask the superintendent and his staff to begin the discussion on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our staff will come forward to present, and we then will gladly take any questions from the board.
Yeah, that's it. Just go back to the beginning. Absolutely. Good evening, Board Chair, Board members, Dr. Kramer. Tonight we're going to go through with the work session with the CIP analysis. The CIP analysis is, once again, we presented all of the findings and we presented to you the 9 different items and for your approval and to put them into a list and for the next step to turn those over to the Board of Supervisors. So the CIP analysis, all information presented has a potential cost fluctuation, increase or decrease 20% above the estimated budget. This is caused by manpower shortages, material shortages, increased timeline for delivery, as well as reduced number of qualified bidders. Now, I'm making sure that information is out there because once I tell you that, let's just say, item will cost $10,000 and it comes back in at $10,200. I just need you to know it's a fluctuation in price that could exist. So first up for discussion will be, and I will go through the slides, each number, each item, and give you time to discuss it, or you can just let me know that you'll discuss it later once you have enough information. Expansion of a new school. Now, of course, expansion of a new school was part of the original New Hardy planning processes, the planning sessions. Those that were there for that committee knew that as soon as we were starting building New Hardy, it was going to be an 18-month cycle, and then we're going to start on, at that time, was the new West Side. And of course, COVID occurred, inflation, different things of that nature, that caused us to have to go in a different direction. New housing, construction developments in the county has also pushed towards the expansion of a new school. And then, of course, what we're trying to do now is an area study to give you more information about the expansion of a new school and what is needed in what areas. There's no need for me or Dr. Kramer to sit here and tell you as an expert in population or area, different things of that nature. We need to bring someone in to let us know the plans that we had now would be almost 3 years ago. Are those plans still legitimate to today? Are those plans still needed for right now? Now, for the board information, the average going price right now was approximately $400 a square foot, and this is increase, decrease monthly, and that is for an elementary school. The latest information that I could find was, and I did pull this information today, it was on middle schools. Middle schools are going to run a little bit higher. If you can look into the third column on the far right, you would find, I apologize, the fourth column on the far right, you'll see the total cost. And this is going to be Buffalo Gap Middle School that was in Augusta County, Riverheads Middle School, New Falling Creek Middle School, and the MS-14 school in Loudoun. These schools are all 6 to 8. Once again, I could not find at this time for the 2023, I couldn't find any examples of a pre-K through 4. But what you're going to look at is the square footage. And once again, the total cost of square footage on the far right will be Buffalo Gap Middle School at a total of 66,000 square feet, will be $416 a square foot. Same with Riverheads Middle School, 62,000 square feet, came to $500 a square foot. New Falling Creek Middle School, $341 a square foot. And of course, MS-14 will be $526 a square foot. Now, of course, the square footage cost is a turnkey model, meaning this is for grading, this is for sewage, this is for everything. So just imagine one school could be built in the city with sewer, plumbing, gas, and everything already available. Another school could be built out more in a rural area. So all of that has to be ran to it, Dominion Power, and so many other additives. That's why it's such a fluctuation in the square footage price. So that's the information that I want to present to you concerning the new school. Is there any questions or at this time concerning this issue, project?
Yes, Dr. Coleman. I thought we had already approved the square footage of the West Side Middle School, and we had sent that off to the Board of Supervisors for funding.
Yes, ma'am. What we approved was 2 different models.
The prototypes,
The
right?
2 different prototypes. And we narrowed it down to 2 prototypes. One was the...
Cherry School in Suffolk.
Yes, ma'am. And the other one was Georgia Towel itself. It was those 2
And
models
they
that we were
sort of
looking
merged
at.
some of the plans, right.
So we... that's the point that we got to before everything actually, if you want to use the terminology, broke down and COVID started, the whole 9 yards. So the funding or anything else for that, ma'am, I wasn't aware of. Are you speaking of funding for those 2, for a model?
We actually, okay, we did this after COVID, after we came back from the pandemic. We did it right here in this auditorium.
Okay.
Mrs. Carr was the board chair at the time. It was near her, and
Yes, ma'am.
close to the end of her tenure. And we approved it and sent it on that night because Westside and the planning staff, we had students, staff, and parents, they all were part of that planning of which middle school they wanted.
Okay.
And I think that night it was decided they went with the Cherry School
Okay,
in Suffolk as the prototype.
okay,
And we approved it and sent it on to the Board of Supervisors for the funding.
okay. Ms.
Now,
Getz,
I could be wrong, but, you know, hey, I thought.
no. Ms. Getz, and I think Dr. Kell is saying the same thing, that you are correct. I'm not, can't remember that, but Ms. Getz is saying yes.
I think the one you were talking about before COVID, that was the Hardy plans.
Okay.
We had made the plans, and just as we sent them over, we shut down. And when we came back, the cost of the school changed because of the building materials had changed.
Okay.
The cost, right.
Yes.
Ms. Tynes, you're correct. What you're speaking of, we did go to, I think, 2 different schools.
Yeah.
We had a committee of parents and students.
Students that time.
And we went to a couple schools to pick which middle school plan model that we liked, because we were looking at the prototype, and it was the Fred Cherry in Suffolk
Fred Cherry.
that was decided on.
And they were going to tweak it a little
You are correct.
for us,
Yes.
right?
Nope.
So it's right now, we're pending funding from the Board of Supervisors to say, hey, it's a go.
Yeah, that was for a 5, 6, 7 school.
Right.
To do the plan that we had originally intended
Okay.
for 5, 6, 7, and then the Smithfield
Okay.
Intermediate, Smithfield High School.
Okay, thank you. I'm an old lady, but some things I still remember.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mrs. Tynes, if I may, because I'm trying to keep up, or what we're saying is we've already got a school in mind, or has things changed from now?
We have a prototype for a middle school, which is going to replace Westside Elementary, and it's going to be on Turner Drive. And that's the Fred Cherry School. We're using that model as prototype in Suffolk, Virginia.
For grades 5, 6, 7.
Yes.
And how many grades do we have here today in Westside?
We also have 3 grades, 4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6. But 4 is going to be going to Hardy. Am I correct?
So when so this is pre-COVID. We had a very large committee that met to look at the plan for what would happen, you know, on this end of Isle of Wight due to growth. That was when New Hardy was approved, and the decision at that time, the plan was for Carrollton and Hardy to be pre-K through 4. West Side would be built to be 5, 6, and 7. Smithfield Middle School would become Smithfield Junior High School for grades 8 and 9. And then Smithfield High School would be 10, 11, 12, thereby freeing up a lot more space for Smithfield High School to expand and grow. That was the original plan. Okay. And in fact, the intent was for West Side to be built first. However, Ms. Tynes can speak to this, when the community and we started looking and visiting both Hardy and West Side, the decision was then made to replace Hardy first, then follow it with West Side.
So that's a lot.
I know.
So we've got, things have changed, right? So Hardy went first. So does the plan that was in place for the existing prototype, does that still make sense today?
I mean, I think that, yes, that does make sense. I think one of the things that we do need to look at, and we've talked about the capacity studies that we are working on gathering that information for you, because I think what we're finding is, yes, that we still need that plan, but we also are going to be faced with an issue of pre-K through 4 and not having enough room in Carrollton, probably sooner rather than later. Because as I told you at the last board meeting, you know, our original plan was to put 4th grade in Carrollton when New Hardy opened, and we cannot do that. And that's only been a few years that we had made that plan, but we now do not have the room in Carrollton to move 4th grade. So 4th grade has to remain here. So the hope was we could have Hardy and Carrollton would be the same, you know, the same grades. Because there are some issues. You know, we have such a different configuration, but we're not going to be able to do that because we don't have the room at Carrollton. So I don't know. Yes, we still need for this school that the need is still there. Yes, this school it needs to be replaced. However, I don't know how far we are from the elementary needing to have additional space. And so that's what we are in the process of looking at, the capacities.
And that's why we changed the CIP from saying a west side to
Right.
a new school.
Right. See, the issue is, Wight County even on the southern end of the county, I can remember when we were start replacing Windsor High School, and at that time they wanted to do high school, middle school combined. Even before they completed construction, they knew it was going to be too small. That's because that area started growing. And we cannot stop growth. It's going to happen because the local governments are going to approve it because that brings income in for them to continue. So the same thing is pretty much going to happen here with all of the developments that are coming about are here because we can estimate all we want to, but we really don't know how many families are going to come in with school-age children, and especially the elementary age. Right now, majority of the people that live, I know on the northern end, right here in the Smithville area, I can pretty much say they're 55 and over. That's the majority. But with the new developments that are coming in, we're finding, especially when they say we're finding more young families coming in. And that's what's going to happen. We can graduate 500 students a year between Smithfield and Windsor. And we'll say, oh, that'll free up 500 spaces, okay? But we'll be intaking just as many on the elementary level with all these developments. And it's not like anyone made a mistake. It just happens, okay? That's why when we get into the process of designing and building schools, the new way of designing the schools like Hardy Elementary, they can very easily be expanded. We can expand them because the walls that are in there and the outside of the building, you can attach something to it. It's just like adding, what did they tell us when they did that, Dr. Coleman? It's like adding a modular unit to it, slap them together. I'm not going to say slap them together, but they can just go to the back, put a piece on, you won't know the difference. It won't like they added something on. And that's the design of the newer schools now because of growth. So I'm finished.
Okay, so I don't think there's going to be any argument that we need new schools.
Yeah, we need
So
them.
now it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we need a strong analysis really to understand exactly where we need them specifically for preschool, but exactly how many we need. And obviously most of the vast majority is going to be, on this end of the county. And so we've got to look at, first make sure, after we know what we need, is the plan for the Cherry School still the right plan? If it is, good to go.
It's a
But
good plan.
if it's not, how do we make the adjustments based on the available space that we have to build on and based on our needs as a county? So I think they have to be looked at very, very closely, and that's going to take some very rigorous analysis, and hopefully we will be able to get that done. I know it's not going to be easy, but that's absolutely has to be done by the numbers.
The cherry plan is really a nice plan. Honestly, it's better than our Georgia Tyler plan. There was, at the time when we built Georgia Tyler, and you're thinking about what we're going to say, 8 to 10 years ago when they got the plans and all together, there were some schools in Virginia that used that as a prototype. But since then, things have changed, architectural designs and things like that. And Suffolk has used a lot of the newer ones. And they compared our plan of our middle school with that middle school. And there were some others too, because I think I'm not positive, but I think I did hear something about Henrico County, maybe.
There was one in Henrico, one in Norfolk that we visited, and then the one in Suffolk.
Right. because it's Henrico that actually built all of those schools and pretty much used the same prototype or something for all of them, but their money is a little pocketbook, it's a little deeper than ours. They built about 6 or 7 schools at one time.
So would we be taking the blueprints from the Cherry School, or would we be modifying them?
Well, we have a prototype.
Very little modification.
And they're going to tweak it for us.
How many students were we looking at the time?
About 1,000, if my memory serves me
About
correctly.
1,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe a
And
little bit
just
more.
Without, and I'm not going to hold you to this number.
Yeah.
But what are we looking at right now?
I would say around there, maybe a little bit more.
Still right around 1,000? Okay.
What I would like to mention, Ms. Briggs and I have talked, and when the county approves new developments, they get, and I forget the name of it, but it's a projection.
Yes.
Right.
It's a student, it's a capital and
Do you remember?
generation index that they
Yeah.
use to determine.
And so they project how many students should come from families who move into those. So we are working on looking at that, because since we had that original plan, there's new developments that we did not anticipate on that
great.
corridor.
Right.
It's, as you know, it's really
They're just
grown.
coming up.
So I think it is prudent for us at this point to go back and look at, we're working with the county, and we know we need to do that. We are going to get that information to you. But I want you to think that we're doing it on our own. We are working with the county on that.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
Mr. Scheer, I have a question for Ms. Getz. Mrs. Getz, when's the elementary school? All right, and Georgia Tyler. I'm thinking what you were just telling us, that there is a possibility that 4th grade, we wanted to match Hardy and Carrollton, K4. If that is not going to happen, what is the enrollment right now at Windsor Elementary? Is it full to capacity or close to it?
It's close because we have a lot of special programs
Up
there. So as far as space, there's not really additional space. Even though there's not as many students there as there was. The space is utilized because of our special education self-contained programs.
So they have K4 there.
They are pre-K through 5.
They have K5. Okay.
So that might be.
Is that a possibility to move the 5 over to the middle school, Georgia Tyler?
No.
They're pushed to capacity as well?
Well,
No space?
I don't think the space is as conducive for 5th grade. I mean, maybe, but that was never in the plan.
But then we were thinking about doing the same thing here if we built the school over there for middle school.
Yes, we were going to do that here because the pre-K through 5 was not going to work without a new elementary school. What we would love, ideally, in a perfect world, we have pre-K through 5 elementary schools on this end as well.
Okay.
And then, a middle school.
around.
But that wasn't going to happen without a brand new elementary school to be able to take pre-K through 5. So the thought was, we could do pre-K through 4.
Because the reason I brought that up, because I was thinking about maybe pushing the boundary lines a little bit, if we could free up some space, if they had it at Windsor Elementary and Georgia Tyler, and maybe some of the students that are going to school here now that maybe live in that direction past West Side could go to Windsor, and it's not,
They do. We have what we call the zone of choice.
Okay.
And if you recall, there is a bubble of
Right.
students between
They-
Turner Drive and headed back towards like Darden Store that all go to Windsor Elementary through 5th grade.
And then they flip
And then they
back
have
over
the
here.
option to come either direction.
But-
So some of them choose to stay on the Windsor track, and then some who have siblings and things like that and live closer this way go to the Smithfield end.
but that's only very few, like
It's about
20.
30 kids.
35.
And that
okay.
was done many years ago to
Yes.
free up some space at Carrollton. And keep in mind, those students are closer to Carrollton than they are to Windsor. We are going, we're already as far as we really could go down into the Carrollton area. It would be hard to go much further because they're so close to Carrollton and then send them to Windsor Elementary. Does that make sense?
Okay, because I'm thinking about the 620, going down here, left 620, that neighborhood, those students most of them go to school here on this end of the county. sometimes, if necessary, we could, well, that's just a thought. It's just a thought. I'm not, I don't want anyone saying this is what we're going to do. It's just an idea so we can get that 4th grade where they need to be on this end of the county. That's all. It's just a thought. Y'all mess around with it and see what you can do.
Yeah,
Not
we
mess
will.
around with it, but
I understand. Look at the numbers.
analyze it and
Right.
see what you can do.
If I can say, Mr. Chair, I think as you've all alluded, there are projected some pending projects that we may not even be aware of that could get approved. And as Mrs. Getz stated, we are in close contact with our colleagues over at the county government. It's really difficult for us to, I think, give you some definitive answers tonight because there is so much work that we would need to do. And I think to your question, Vice Chair Marsh, there's work that we would need to do to see what the actual projects are that we should have in terms of the configuration of a building. So I think it's really difficult for my staff to be able to give you a definitive answer without lots of work that we would need to do offline with county government here internally as well. So if we can bring that back at a future meeting, I think we'll be able to give you a better response than we were able to do at this time.
Yeah,
And
but-
another thing we could think about, and they used to do that, I know years ago when they built Carrollton Elementary, the school board and board of supervisors, I think the original plans, they were supposed to build that school in the Eagle Harbor, like sort of in the center. That was the original plans, but then they pulled it out, and it ended up being a county project. If they had put it in Eagle Harbor, it would have, pretty much the developer would have paid for it. And maybe we can start doing some of that. I mean, they want to come here and develop in our area, fine, but it's costing the citizens. And look what it's doing to us. You all trying to figure out where we're going to put the new students that are coming in. So maybe if we put out there and tell some of these developers, what we don't do it, the board of supervisors will do that. Hey, fine, come on in here, but build this new school we need for these kids.
And once you determine what your CIP priorities are, we can go and do that investigative work for what size school and what the configuration of that would be for elementary versus middle or a combined school. There are some of those in the state.
Yeah, I think no matter where the school falls out, we're going to need that because we need another school. There's no getting around it.
I would agree with you, Mr.
We
Chair.
need
So
another
that's work, regardless, I think that's work that we have to do, absolutely.
Let's go on to,
Mr. Chair,
Oh.
I do have one generalized question just for
Please.
clarification for my purposes. Obviously, I wasn't sitting up here when these initial conversations were taking place. I know, Ms. Tynes, you alluded to the placement of the new school being on Turner Drive.
Yes.
Where roughly would it fall on Turner Drive?
You know where the middle school is now?
Yes, ma'am.
And once you pass the middle school going down Turner Drive, it's supposed to be on the other side of the middle school.
Okay,
That's,
and-
the county owns that property.
Mr.
Okay,
Wooster,
that
it
was going to be my next question, if there would be any land expense involved in it as well.
No, the county owns that property already, and they walked it off and told us before we even, finalized it's going to be on Turner Drive.
Okay.
So it's where the practice fields
Yeah.
currently are, and the preliminary thought was across the street. There's some land that we could make our practice fields,
Field.
and we would have a tunnel
Tunnel
going
underneath.
underground for the students to access the practice fields.
Walk under the tunnel.
What about water and sewage access?
It's
I don't know
there.
about that.
It's already out there from the town of Smithfield.
So it is in place? It
Yes,
would
it's
just
already in
require
place.
connection?
It's already in place.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's not me.
It's in place.
I would definitely check on that and get back for a definite and tell you how far the length is and how far it runs down to the property that is owned. I can check on that and get back to you.
Okay. I yield.
anything else? Okay, if we can go to the next subject, the improved school security.
All right. Improve school security. There we go. No, not yet.
Okay.
All right. So detection systems. Okay. One thing that when we're talking about improving school security, You know that some of the schools, we're looking at different vestibules, we're looking at night locks, we're looking at changing outdoors, we're looking at making sure that we have the proper protocols in place. All of this is layers, layers and layers. The second item on the CIP would be improved school security, and the main focus is detection systems. Detection systems when you come into the building to detect various items that can harmful items that might a student or outside individual might have on them when they come in. So I am going to show you 1 or 2 quick videos, 30 seconds to a minute and 30 second videos. Now, what we don't want to do is get caught up on the actual name of this particular company. It's a widely used company, but once again, if we should move forward with this, this is going to be a major RFP. And if it's an RFP, we want to make sure that everyone has access, everyone has ability to actually come and join with the RFP. So this video does show one company, but we're not stuck with this one company.
This solar system costs $20,000, and this one didn't cost its owner anything.
So what we have here is our standard configuration express system. This is a dual lane configuration for high throughput screening. We can screen up to 3,600 people per hour in this configuration.
Oh, hold on. Oh, I'm trying to figure out who's talking.
We see him.
I knew it wasn't him. I thought it was Eric back there talking.
No, hopefully we can project this so that both the board and the public
The nice
can.
system I saw.
Here we go.
You all have seen them too, but you didn't know what you were walking by. I'm sure you have.
So as they're pulling this up, so Board Member Colick and Board Member Tynes, Chair Colick, as you recall at VSBA, the conference we attended, this technology was shared with us, and this is when we first saw it. At the time, as they present, I was interested in presenting this for middle and high schools as a result of recent incidents.
So what we have here is our standard configuration express system. This is a dual lane configuration for high throughput screening. We can screen up to 3,600 people per hour in this configuration. What you'll also notice is that there are some tablets that are connected to this system. These are wireless tablets, which gives you some flexibility in the positioning and where you want to place the tablets. There's 2 different types of tablets here. One is our flow control, and then the other one would be used for a resolution area. If someone alerts, the image will be displayed on the tablet, and that person can be directed to a separate resolution area to resolve any type of threatening object that they may have. So let's get on with the demonstrations. The first thing I'm going to do is walk towards the front side of the system. Here I am on the front as if I'm entering a facility. I'm just going to walk through at a normal pace. I don't have to stop or anything. And you can see that nothing has happened on the system or at the tablet. And that's because I don't have anything threatening on me, but I do have everyday objects like a cell phone and keys and a wallet that are non-threatening and don't be considered alerts. Now I'll demonstrate an alert using a backpack. Here I am on the front side of the Express, and I'm going to walk through normally. And what you may have heard is the alert. So I have an item in this backpack that does alert. It's shown on the tablet screen. And in this case, it's a pressure cooker device that could be used as an explosive device. Next, I'm going to show you what it looks like for kind of non-threatening items in a backpack. And again, I'll put the bag on my back. I'm going to walk through at a normal pace. And again, you'll see nothing has happened. And in this case, I have a lightweight laptop. I have a power adapter and some of the usual stuff that someone may have, in their bag. The next alert I'm going to show is an item that may alert in a bag that's of a smaller material. Here's the bag again. Here I am walking through Express. You can hear the alert from the tablet. You can see the lights on the back of the system turn red. And in this case, it's the barrel of an assault rifle. So we can find large objects and we can find smaller types of objects that can be threatening. The last alert I'm going to show you is an item that's on my person. I'm going to put a jacket on so it's concealed. Again, here I am on the front side of the Express. I'm going to walk through at a normal pace. You'll see the lights on the back of the system turn red, and you'll hear the alert. And in this case, it is a small firearm that's on my hip that the Express detected.
That was a quick snap of exactly what we're looking at when you say detection systems. There are many types of detection systems that Sergeant Brinkley here will tell you about in just a second. And he will go into a little bit more in depth about some of our neighbors that have already stepped their foot into this particular realm. Right here, Sergeant Brinkley.
Before you do that, is it possible to show the other quick clip? What I want to show is I think one of the concerns from others has been the impeding of egress into buildings as a result of this, and I think the other clip shows that in large venues you're able to get thousands of people in, and I think this illustrates that. Thank you. That's good.
There we go. So once again, that was two quick videos of the detection systems that are being used right now. And once again, we don't have one set, but Sergeant Brinkley's job is to go out here, look at those different detection systems, maybe get some on-site demonstrations, not only for some administrators, but individuals at central office. And then, of course, he's already went out. Tell us a little bit about what you have done so far.
So one of the local school divisions that have actually had this system installed, and they are actually using the Evolve technology. Like Dr. Coleman said, we're looking at multiple different ones with different price points, but we're also looking at the benefits and the risks associated with accepting those at lower cost. But one of the local school divisions, Franklin City Public Schools, just received the Evolve scanner off of a grant that they obtained. It was installed on Monday, and they were scheduled to go live with it already. They've had a couple of glitches with the setup and the installation of it, and they were not able to go live as of yet. But as soon as that does happen, I'll be going to Franklin Public Schools, to more specifically Franklin High School, and seeing the scanners used in a live situation and seeing how they utilize those.
All right. And one thing that we don't pinpoint was after viewing and analyzing our schools, we're looking at 25 two-lane devices, and that's a maximum. Just to cover all areas, and once again, this is something that we'll go back and look at again and again, just to really narrow down exactly what we need. The average cost of these range from $85,000 to maybe $119,000 each. And so we just said $100,000 each, just a nice medium right there. So 25 at $100,000 each, we're looking at $2.5 million for these devices. Once again, that's a fluctuation of 20% up or down. When you met with the gentleman that came out to see you, could you tell them more about the financing and the other options of leasing?
We discussed the different options, and as of right now, we've received 2 quotes from 2 technology solution companies. One company offers the unit, the installation, and along with that, they offer the 1 year of support. And with that scenario, you would purchase the unit, and the units would belong to Wight County Public Schools. The other one is a 4-year contract, and it is set up as a lease program where you operate the lease. Now, with that lease, the company is responsible for the maintenance and any updates, installing any updates on that, and the cost is spread out over the period of that 4 years.
I have a question. Between the two companies, would the costs be about the same if we own the product or lease the product? Will it?
They're similar in comparison, and I have not confirmed, like I said, we're still in the very early stages of this, so I have not confirmed with the company doing the lease on it, if at the end of that lease, do we retain possession of the scanners for our use, or how that process works. I'm not quite sure on that yet. But with the one, it is a 1-year contract, and it's a little more costly to own that, and then you would have to pay a maintenance contract for any years after the initial year.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I was thinking about, because like you said, it's still new and you're still evaluating the system. Because I would like to know whether it be feasible to lease it and they do all of the maintenance at the end of 4 years. Hey, if we still want to continue to use it, they will upgrade with new something. But if we purchased it and at the end of that year that they do the maintenance, we own it. And if we ever want to upgrade, because technology, I know that from my home security, they upgrade all of these boxes and you have to buy it all over new again anyway. So that's why I was wondering if it would be feasible to just lease and they would do the upgrade constantly as we need it.
And one thing about the RFP process, ma'am, you can actually have those two options. When the company brings the suggestions there, you can have it out for a lease option or buy option. They present both options so we can choose.
But I was just wondering what would be best for us. Right. Because at the end of the day, if we own it, it sounds good when you own something, but then you own it, and then 2 or 3 years out, that equipment is old, it's outdated, we've already paid for it, and we start all over.
Yes, ma'am.
But if we were in a lease agreement, it would be updated whenever they need to update it.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good point.
But that's just, that's a question for you all to ask as you're negotiating with them, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Are there any more questions concerning the detection system or where we stand at or forward progress?
Now, do you know how long this particular type of system has been in place? Has it been more than 5 or 10 years?
I believe it was initially the conference that you attended. That is when when it was beginning to evolve and beginning to come about.
There are some, in fact, at that conference, we were informed that one of the larger school systems in the nation, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, they're using it. I think they've been using it for a few years. We'll find that out. I actually just received a contact to that district this morning. So we'll follow up, and as Sergeant Brinkley stated, we're having conversations with Franklin. I know that there's some other school divisions in our area who are also considering this. So, and as I stated, Evolve is just one company. There are other companies who provide this technology. So we're having conversations with others, and we're certainly having conversations with other school systems and districts around the area and the country to find out about some of the intricacies you're asking us about. So there's more information we need to provide to board.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's fairly new, and I'm 5 years or less, then I would definitely 100% agree with Mrs. Tynes that lease is the way to go because technology evolves so much. So, but thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I've just got one. I'm in agreement, again, with what both of y'all said as far as leasing the equipment. If you're looking at the company, replacing or repairing during that contract at no expense to us, then that's a win situation right there. I did send quite a few questions earlier today, which I know we're early in the game, and I really didn't expect a whole lot of answers or feedback from that. But one of the things I just thought about is when you're dealing with the detection system, whichever brand it may be, do they have sensitivity adjustments that you can change, to specifically detect certain items?
That's an excellent question. And with all of these systems, you are able to adjust the sensitivity. And some of the other systems, other than the Evolve that we've looked at, they even have more adjustment. But along with that adjustment comes, the chance, the error of missing certain items or having your false positives pop up where you're constantly stopping students for everyday items. So that's where that adjustment would have to be worked out.
Yeah.
Right. Just one more thing. Let's just say moving forward, okay, we decide to go with a certain company or brand. Prior to doing that, would it be possible, for, all of the boards and staff to get an on-site demonstration per se?
I can't answer that for certain, but I would certainly think that with spending that much money, especially if we were going to outfit all the schools, I don't foresee that being an issue for them to come out and do an on-site demonstration prior to that.
They want to sell it, they will.
And once again, that's part of the RFP process. You can put that in there as that's one of the items that needs to occur, has to occur, and that's what will happen.
And sometimes those companies, if they've already installed it in a school, so we can actually see how it works, they will invite you to go to that locality and actually see it, work in place.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there any more questions? If not, we'll go to next topic, which is renovating the Smithfield High School band and chorus room.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Renovating Smithfield High School band and chorus room, and just wanted to just go into more detail concerning the band room and the chorus room expansion. I think I've had a couple of conversations. The last CIP, this is kind of the avenue that we went, and the board at that time did approve that this was going to be an item on the CIP. And I just wanted to let you know, when me and Dr. Kell were working with the CIP, once an item makes it on the CIP, it doesn't mean that it's been funded. It means the school board has approved to go to the Board of Supervisors with that item. Just because it's on the CIP doesn't mean that the school board has funded that item in any way. They're working with the Board of Supervisors to get the item funded. So I just want to clear up any issues of that nature. The band room expansion and renovation. The cost will be $1,233,120, and the chorus room expansion renovation will be $554,400. And that does not include design contingency, and it does not include, of course, the GSC markups and the OH&P. So,
Explain those acronyms, please.
it is. And I don't have my notes. So the OH&P, the markup for the products and for general contractor, I need to.
General contractor markups on.
It's it's the gross cost for the markups. And I really wanted to focus on the OH&P, and I had a fancy definition for that. So it does not include the markups or the design contingency for that.
So in plain language, you'd have to hire an architect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fee proposals, the whole 9 yards, the contingency is set aside. If they go into the wall, they find that it's an old pipe, copper, it's electric, different things of that nature. That's where the 20% fluctuation comes in at.
So based on your experience, swag it. How much total cost?
I
won't hold you to it. I just want.
Please don't, because I know you hold me to a lot of other items. Let's go with, it will probably be 1.9 to 2.1, between 1.9 and 2.1 million. That's the easy cost for it.
Is that just for the band room or for the band room and the chorus?
It's going to be the band room and the chorus room renovations.
All right.
And that's with the design contingency markups. So, yeah, 2.1 would be.
When we last discussed this, you asked me about the number of students that were served in those programs. And currently, in the first semester for the band, we have a total of 58 students. In second semester, we'll have a total of 76. In the chorus room, first semester is 58, second semester is 49. The chorus room, first semester is 76, and second semester is 86.
80?
86, yes, ma'am.
86, okay.
And that's for all three blocks. So that's not how many are in there at a time. That's how many are total spread across 3 90-minute blocks.
And Ms. Marsh, the one thing that I do know that sometimes will pop up from time to time that will increase costs would be if they start cutting the pipes and they find asbestos. That will be cost increase, and some of these buildings, if they're old, we've seen them happen.
They don't have asbestos up at Smithfield High School, Smithfield Middle, because they were built after that. This building and the old Hardy, possibility.
Does anybody have any questions on the renovation of the band and chorus rooms?
Just got one question. Is there a current occupancy load for the current band room?
Yes.
Yes, there is. Do I know the occupancy load at this time? No, I do not. I can get that information back to you.
Is it 100?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know it right offhand.
It's up there. I forgot, but it's up there on the wall.
Yeah, there's no way you
Yeah,
can
we're
put
not
100 people
exceeding
in
it.
there.
And it's up there. They have to.
We're not exceeding that at this time.
They're not.
I was just curious what the occupancy load was for that particular room,
Got you.
based on the number of students that are currently going to be occupying it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So I got to ask the question. If we're not at occupancy, and people throw rocks at me for even asking this, but if we're not at occupancy level, why are we expanding it? So I've been there, I've seen it, no doubt it needs some freshening up. No doubt, no argument. It seems like a lot of their problems over there is storage, and the HVAC system looks like it's in dire need of some maintenance as well. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, when the band and the chorus came to us about 3 years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And asked for this, the way that it's designed now, the chorus and the band, the rooms are side by side. And I guess they figured that would be a good idea because where the noise is coming from, we group them together. But the chorus couldn't hear from the band instruments, the drums and all, was interfering with their practices and things like that. So they needed to be separated. That was one reason. And at that particular time, 3 years ago, even up until about a year ago, we had lots of students in the band, okay? I'm not gonna get into logistics, that's Dr. Kramer's area, but we're anticipating students to come, enroll in the program and increase that number again, okay? It's just decreased pretty much this year, but we're anticipating it to go back up, okay?
And that's correct. When this project was first brought about, the band and chorus programs were, actually the band program was much larger and the chorus program was much smaller. But that has since kind of flipped the other direction. To remedy the sound issue, there were sound panels installed in the chorus room. So we've invested about $50,000 in trying to add and renovate and make the spaces appropriate for the two different groups to be able to practice. And I think that what you said is true. It's largely more about elbow room and instruments and storage capacity, which prevents students groups from going and practicing over here and practicing over there.
And actually, another thing, the board that was sitting there that night listening to it, we were anticipating at that time the new school being over there, because we said, hey, can you hang on for a year or so? And, hopefully we would get this new school built, and that will alleviate some of the space, because Smithfield High will become larger if they were going to take over the middle school building that's there now. But, of course, we're sitting here and we're still waiting.
Okay, so we're anticipating the band to grow over the next couple of years. So my question is then, within the Smithfield Middle School, how many people do we have in a band there?
The numbers at the middle school program at the current moment would not indicate that we'll see a substantial growth in the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So, but we would say that the 5th and 6th grade bands here at Westside are substantially larger than they once were. So as that bubble moves through, we will start to see the band program continue to grow. And of
Okay.
course, students who are interested in band, even at the 7th grade level, can join the band in 7th and 8th grade if they so choose. Sometimes being in that complex and hearing them and attending the games and things like that, students develop an interest and they join at that time. So there's no limit on students joining the band at any point.
Okay, so this remains a need.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Mr. Collick, and two, I would like to see all the Wight County schools to grow. Right now, when we think of the band, we think of the marching band. And we do have a concert band, which consists of a lot of the students of the marching band, off-season, those type things. I would like to see it grow and to even have, the string instrument band, those type of things. We can diverse into other things, because most of the time when people you say band, right away it's the marching band.
Oh, absolutely. All three of my kids, I made them join the band.
Yeah, I like to see the young ladies playing big harps and everything and trying to bring them into schools, those type things.
It does so much for the memory.
What's wrong, Mr. Marsh?
Ms. Buggs just told me there are 40 students in the 8th grade band right now.
It's a good amount.
Explore them to more instruments, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on the band room?
No band room.
If not, let's talk about the track and field upgrades.
Track and field upgrades. First, we're looking at Windsor High School. The track upgrade will be $200,000, and that's going to be, once again, plus or minus. And as you can see, if you jump right down to Smithville High School, it's primarily the same thing. And this is just for what we have right there, just upgrading it so it's usable. Once again, it's what we have right there, upgrading it so that it's usable. Then jumping right back up to Windsor High School, football field upgrade. The football field upgrade it's approximately $50,000. And this is working with the AD, making sure that we're crowning the field correctly, and getting everything ready to go. With football field at Smithville High School, it's a little bit different. The football field at Smithville High School not only needs a crown put on it, it needs the crowning done. It needs the sprinkler system added to it. The sprinkler system, the current one, does not cover the entire field. And then it's major drainage issues at Smithville High School. Those drainage issues and sprinkler issues don't exist at Windsor High School, but they do exist at Smithville High School. So that's why there's a cost differential from $50,000 to $320,000 for the football field, grass field at Smithville High School.
So that 320 is because that would include the drainage.
The drainage, absolutely. If you look at Windsor High School in most fields, you will see the big city drains, what they're called. At Smithville High School, you're going to find one. And at Windsor High School, you can find several around. Though the field was actually built with those drains, but over the years they have been covered up, and you can't even find them at this time.
Okay.
Just to be clear here, we're talking about upgrading the existing field. We're not talking about a new synthetic field.
That is next slide. But yes, this is grass, upgrading exactly what is there, and fixing the track, meaning aligning the track. The problem with Smithfield High School track is it was built as a quarter. It was a quarter lap track. Tracks these days are built at 400-meter tracks. Well, it was built as a quarter. So all of the lines and different things of that nature has to be adjusted back to the way the track should be situated.
And note that that field upgrade still would not allow us to host any of the regional or larger competitive events.
All right, we're going to talk about that. Are there any questions concerning just the upgrade of the current fields?
Yeah, I think I might have asked you this once before, but these will be ongoing things. Every year we'll be able to have to maintain the fields. They won't cost as much, obviously.
Right.
But is this something that we can put into the regular budget cycle versus in the capital improvement?
This is something, once we do the initial, as you stated, once we do the initial cost, yes, this is something we can put in a regular maintenance cycle, and it won't get as high as we have it right here. Regular maintenance on a track will last a lot longer than just waiting until it degraded and then trying to redo the track over again. So it's something that you can put into regular maintenance.
Okay, Thank you. Anybody else?
I've got one question.
Okay.
And again, this is a clarifying question.
Yes, sir.
I've heard, and you just mentioned, that due to the field, you would not be able to host other games. Can you just clarify the reasoning behind that? Because I'm not quite grasping that one.
It is actually a requirement in their district in order for them to host regional games that they have a synthetic surface.
So, Virginia High School League and underneath, I went on and switched to the synthetic track surface. The other considerations is the playability in the event of inclement weather. Now, that is what that you hear individuals talk about. The playability in the event of inclement weather talks directly to grass fields. So, once I guess you can say the regional groups, state groups get together and they just start trying to decide where we're going to have this football championship, where we're going to have this soccer championship, where we're going to have this field hockey championship. Is it going to rain? Looking at inclement weather, different things of that nature. If you have a grass field and there is weather of that nature, you'll be discounted. You'll be taken directly out. So that's why that's in there. Slope of the field, soccer field should not be flat, and it's going into the slope of the field, different things of that nature that will exclude your school, your field, from being allowed to host those larger events of that nature.
Yeah. No, I think a couple of years ago, Smithfield High they were able to host cross-country, but of course, if you know anything about cross-country, they were not out on the field. They did it over in Windsor Castle Park, and they ran around in the town of Smithfield. And they were able to hold that regional cross-country. Right. But, and our young students, they really work hard. And it would be nice, it's really sad that they cannot host other things like the regular track or a football game or something at Smithfield High School. They want to be proud, and they always have to go to some other school. And it's not like we have facilities in Smithfield that they could, use like they have in some other places. We don't have that.
You also asked me the number of students that are impacted for the track and field programs. And so at Windsor High School, there are 13 total teams that utilize the track and field. And so that impacts a total of 250 students. And at Smithfield High School, there are also 13 teams, but there is a total of 375 students that are participating in those specific events.
250 at Windsor and 375 Smithfield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I know that.
I guess we can roll right into this.
All right. So
the synthetic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the synthetic track surface coating and the cost for this. Okay, as you can see, I put the direct costs. These are the updated costs: demolition and preliminary site work, parking, streets, sidewalks, the storm drainage system, and of course landscaping. That is the encompassing of the synthetic track, the $1.5 million. That is the encompassing of the synthetic track. And of course, contingency for that project itself. Come to $2,611,057.
Tell me the difference in the tracks between this one and the previous. Anything?
Right.
A track's a track, right? It's
Right.
a rubber surface track.
Now, when in the terminology of track here, they mean not football field, but field. But it's calling it a synthetic track. So, you want me to tell you the differences between a synthetic field and a grass field?
My point. I just want to make sure that everybody listening knows it. The big difference here isn't the track; it's the playing field.
It's the playing field.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And once again, I don't know the exact numbers, but everyone in the division that Smithfield is playing in, everyone plays on a turf field, synthetic turf field.
With the exception of Smithfield.
With the exception of Smithfield. How many teams are in that conference? 4A. Yeah, it's 4A.
And what's the name of the division? So we can.
Bay Rivers District.
What is it?
River?
Bay Rivers District.
Bay
Bay
River.
Rivers. Okay.
Bay River.
And it's the leveling of the teams, the different ends of the county, so Windsor being 2A and then Smithfield being 4A. They aren't in the same conferences, and because they're not in the same conferences, the regulations aren't necessarily the same.
The conferences depends on the population of the schools.
Right. Depends on the population.
Yeah, if we can get the literature that says that they've got to have the turf to be able to be competitive. I would really appreciate that because
I'll have the AD send it to me.
yeah, that would be something we would absolutely have to have if this was to become at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions?
Any more
concerning-
questions?
I don't have any.
Mr. Worcester? Okay, let's go to the baseball field upgrades.
Baseball field upgrades. Both schools were looking at trying to get lights on their baseball fields. So, and this is lights for the girls and guys teams. So we have Windsor High School boys. They do not have existing lights at all. That's going to be cost of $400,000. This is the maximum cost. Once again, this is have all of the contingency, everything built into this cost. It's going to be $400,000. Girls cost $100,000 because the girls already have lights there on the softball field. They just need to be upgraded. Smithville High School boys, once again, $400,000, and girls softball is going to be $400,000. Now this will allow games to be played at night. Each school has 4 different teams. When you're looking at varsity and JV of the baseball and softball teams, this will allow hosting tournaments playing, and of course this will help with the school revenue. And then, of course, allow more time on the field for teams, for all of the teams there. Allow more time because currently, as soon as it gets dark, everyone has to leave.
Those early season practices have to end a little earlier.
Right.
So today, the only baseball field or softball field with lights is the Windsor High School girls.
Yes, Windsor High School girls.
Is that something new where lights were previously there, they have just
For the
faulted
Windsor High
out?
School girls,
Or have there never been lights there?
as far as I've talked to the ADs, there have never been lights at Windsor High School on the baseball field.
Okay.
Other than the girls' field.
Other than the girls' field, and I don't have the exact date when they were
And
installed.
Smithfield, they do not have lights at all.
No.
Boy,
Boys or girls,
Okay.
they do not have lights.
okay.
Are there any other questions on the baseball field upgrades?
We have a lot of upgrades for
Hearing
sports.
none, let's go to the Fleet Services Building.
Right, Fleet Services Building and Bus Garage. Now, on the Fleet Service Building, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. This is the building where all of the buses are fixed. This is the building, not the current building, but this is what we're shooting for. Building in the back of the annex that allows the buses to come in. It will have 6 working stalls. It will have 2 doors for drive-through service where the buses can drive directly through, 10 potential bays. Now we have this design from Stafford, and that school system was one of the places that allowed us to see their blueprints and us to design what we needed to fit what we have. At the time, that school system that was built, it matched I guess you could say, the site area and the population that we have here in Isle of Wight. Now, it was built in 1979, and in 1979 it cost $1.3 million. That's how much the site plan costs. At this time, it costs maybe $5.5 million for this Fleet Service Building. We're looking at 30 to 40 years once we get this building and being able to service the 80 buses that we have and the growing fleet service that we will have. Below that will be the bus garage. Now, the last renovation that was on the bus garage was when it was built in 1955. I think that all the board members here have actually went out to the bus garage. That's the existing bus garage, and you've seen how it looks and the working conditions there. So $100,000 redoing the restrooms, plumbing, break rooms, new windows, and exterior. So that's the difference between the Fleet Services Building and the bus garage and what they would be used for.
Okay, what would, so the bus garage, that would be used primarily for the restrooms and break rooms?
Now, the bus garage, if
The current bus garage?
if both buildings are built,
Right.
bus garage will be then built for the cars and all of the cars that we have.
Okay, for maintenance on the
For
autos.
maintenance on all of the cars, so all the buses can run through the Fleet Services Building. At this time, one bay is used for all of the cars, and the other 2 bays are used for the buses.
How many technicians do we have?
4.
Do we have any open positions for technicians?
No open positions for mechanics.
Okay.
Just a quick question, based on the 5.5 million,
Yes, sir.
for that particular design, would that be a masonry constructed building or steel?
That will be a steel building.
Okay.
That would be a steel building.
You know where I want to go with that. There is a need for the bus garage. But like I brought up the other day, I think I was in a meeting with Mr. Wooster, you all didn't hear me. I feel that going forward, the county and the 2 towns will probably need transportation, which they do have transportation, if we could all come together and build one. That has always been, a plan, something I felt, because you get the citizens, especially in the 2 towns, they're paying, tax in the town, tax in the county. And and they all pretty much going to utilize transportation one way or the other. You have the towns with their cars, police cars, fire department, everything. Bring it all together. The county has the same thing with public safety and transportation, and bring it all together and build a nice large garage up at the courthouse now, and have a transportation department for all of Wight County.
Yeah, that certainly might be something worth discussing, particularly if it can keep costs for the county
Keep the
low.
costs down, and you have the schools, the 2 towns, and the county. So it'll be coming from pretty much, we won't say schools, we're just going to say the 2 towns and the county coming from 3 pots, okay? Because the county fund the schools, so. And we do need the transportation, and we need it 10 years ago. But if they could look into something where they could build what we need right now for the bus garage, and maybe the county and the 2 towns come and add on to that later, build something where they can add on for their need as well. If they're not ready to do the project together, we really need something. So maybe they can look at a plan that they can adjust very easily if necessary. Because it's a lot of money that's being utilized by the local government and the county, and it's all coming from the same citizens.
And that may be something we can bring up when we have the joint meeting with the supervisors. I think that idea has merit.
Mm-hmm.
So I have had some conversations with some of our supervisors offline, and I think that there's certainly an appetite to have that conversation. And at the end of the day, a positive appetite. At the end of the day, if we're looking at the county as a whole, if we can save taxpayers money, we're doing everyone a disservice if we don't at least sit down and have that conversation.
That's
so
right.
I think.
And it's a lot of, I don't know about the county, but I know the schools in the town of Smithfield. I do know that a lot of money is being generated through that transportation department. That's one of the biggest things, pretty much items, trying to do the maintenance and things like that on the vehicles. I don't know about the town of Windsor, but I'm sure that's a big piece of their purse as well.
At the same time, for the bus technicians that are listening, I understand and recognize that they can't fit a full-size bus in a stall today.
Right.
So next month, February, when it's freezing cold and they have to change out the oil pump, they're going to be out in the cold. So we got to keep that in the back of our mind.
The major thing we need to keep back of our minds, what you just said, but it's dangerous what they're doing right now, because with the big bus, the long bus, they have to back it in one direction. And then if something should happen, we just pray nothing happen, like a fire. You never know, because you're working on things. Something break out, they may not be able to get out there in a safe manner because of the way they say they have to back. They showed me how they have to back it in the way it is now, and then get off the bus and then walk around the other side and things like that. So we need to make the area safe for them. Their workplace needs to be safe.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head. The big issue with the bus garage is safety. It really is. Mr. Worcester, do you have anything?
I'm just looking at the 10 potential bays, and you said there are currently 4 technicians.
4 technicians.
Are there plans to recruit any more technicians for the bus garage?
Well, of course, if the division continues to grow and we continue to add on to the fleet that we already have, of course, then that's something that we'll have to look into.
Right. Just out of curiosity, having worked as a mechanic myself, you've got 6 working stalls. I'm assuming that you would mean bays where you can actually pull the entire bus into.
Well, not just bay. What was described to me was that is the stall when you pull the bus in, you can get under the bus. It's the stall underneath the bus. So at this time,
it's a drive-over pit is what it is.
Pit, yes, sir.
Okay.
Drive-over pit.
Okay, so 6 of those, and then 10 potential bays.
Right, 10 potential bays where you can actually pull.
Drive-through.
It would be 2 drive-throughs.
You're looking at a total of 16 different areas where you can pull a bus in.
No, you're looking at a different potential of 10. 6 of them will be working stalls, 2 of them will be drive-throughs.
6 of the 10.
6 of the 10.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's where my confusion was
No
coming
problem at all. No problem at all.
Thank you.
And the most important thing, the drive-through, because right now we got those long buses, and they're backing them in, and there's no way they can drive through. Even with our modern cars today, we get to drive through, but our buses still cannot drive through, and it's rough on the mechanics, you know. But their heart is there. Their heart is here in Isle of Wight County.
Yes. Any more questions on the fleet services garage?
No, I think we're done there. Let's go to universal pre-K.
So there are a lot of questions about universal pre-K and what exactly that means. And it's essentially adding preschool for all students age 4 in the county. And if you have young children like I do, you'll know that those services are very, very limited in this area. And there's limited numbers of spots for students, rising students, to be in there. And then when you add to that the COVID backlash and those sorts of things, we are looking at an opportunity with pre-K where you could bring those students earlier. You can focus on those early literacy skills, those early numeracy skills, and really helping students develop into good ready for kindergarten students. It's difficult to give you exactly what a cost of that would be because it would depend on where students were and what space was available at existing elementary schools. But if you use our current kindergarten numbers, so we currently have 359 kindergartners, and then subtract the number of pre-K classrooms we already have, that would leave us needing approximately 15 additional classrooms in order to provide universal pre-K. And that's at a rate of 18 students per teacher.
Okay, I have a question for you. You know I like the pre-K. And I think all of us have had an opportunity to visit the Little Sprouts class, so we know what they can do. I was really amazed when I went to visit that class. But is it any way possible, I'm just asking you, if we could get some grants from state, federal government to help us with this, especially being that we're in a rural area and we are connected to all of these major Hampton Roads cities. There is a need for us to have child care and for the parents that have to go out of the community to work, and that's majority of them, that we have child care in our communities. So I was wondering if there is anything out there with the federal government as well as the state that would help us to at least get the program started.
I have not explored that avenue at the current moment, like as of yet. We do already receive Virginia Preschool Initiative funds for the existing classrooms. When they gave us those funds, they didn't anticipate all the additional kids that would be coming to the area either. So it's certainly something that we could look into if this was something that the board prioritized as a need.
Dr. Kramer, I know on federal level, we could, Congressman Bobby Scott, I don't know if you had a chance to meet him, but get him, he's around a lot in the county, and just sit down with him and explain the plan. Maybe he can help us because his title in Washington, he is the Director of Education,
Chairman of the Education.
Chair of Education, right. And like I said, we're a rural area. If we need the help and to help these parents, I don't want anyone to get angry with me, but they bring that money in here to help military. Why can't we help other people, okay? And the federal government will put extra money in the areas to help the military families when they're needed. And I know, not trying to belittle them, yes, they need help as well. But these families with young children, because of course, years ago when we were in school, our mothers were home. But mothers have to work now to provide. You need 2 incomes, if not 3, okay? Sometimes you have to send those kids out there to work. It is what it is. But like I said, check with him. He's personable. He loves people contacting him.
Absolutely, and I think as Dr. Kale stated, if the board requests or wishes, we certainly will explore this. And
yeah, I love to explore money. Free money.
Absolutely.
You don't know until you ask. And, you know, we sit back here and say, well, they're not going to give us anything. They're not going to give us anything because we haven't asked. But if we tell them that there is a need and if we show them the plan, this is what we want and this is the need, okay? We have all of those industries around us. One of the major shipbuilders over here, you never know where they could maybe get those funds for us. That's why I say talk to him. I mean, you know, I just like I said, put it out there and see what happens. There is a need for this, and it has always been a need in Wight County for young parents to have child care. We have a board member right here. Could use it.
And I think it is important to note this isn't childcare. We'd be talking about preschool. So we're only
That's right,
talking about
preschool.
4-year-olds.
It's preschool, like the Little Sprouts
building
class.
those early
Right.
academic skills.
And in that class, the Little Sprouts, you know, it came about during COVID because everything shut down on the Windsor end as far as childcare, and our staff members had to take their kids either to Franklin, Suffolk, or Smithfield, and then drive back to Windsor to work. So you all came up with something for them, and it has worked. That program has worked, and we could use it as a model program for rural areas.
And the Little Sprouts is a CTE, Early Childhood Development Program,
Right.
for our high schoolers. So
Right.
high school students who are interested in working with children or becoming teachers, we hope, plug, that they go and get the experience in classroom management and, you know, development skills and working with children and that sort of thing. So
That's the age. The Little Sprouts students are...
They're only 4 years old.
They're 4 years old.
Yes, ma'am.
So our preschoolers will be 4 years old.
Yes,
the
ma'am.
pre-K. So that's why I said the Little Sprouts, because that's the age group, okay? I know that's a CTE program now. Maybe we can push the little 3-year-olds in CTE program. I'm finished.
I'll float that by Ms. Brand to see what I get.
I mean, if we get this program going for the 4-year-olds, then we could put the little 3-year-olds can be the, what we call Little Sprouts then, for the CTE students.
And the tuition for Little Sprouts is paid by the parents of
Right,
the children
paid
who
by the
attend.
parents, right. Well, we could still, like I said, be the 3-year-olds. Push it back.
So I do have a question. Universal pre-K, so the students bringing the students in for pre-K, does that actually fall under SIP, or are we looking at the classrooms that we need as being part of the capital improvement plan?
Yes, sir. So it would be the actual infrastructure that you would have to have. So we would need 15 classrooms in order to put these students and teachers in a place that was built appropriately for the age of the students. You know, you have little tiny people have little tiny bathrooms and things like that.
Yes.
It's 15 across the
Okay.
district.
Yes, that was across, and I subtracted the number of pre-K classrooms we already have.
Okay, and then the pre-K would be done in a similar fashion as Little Sprouts, I would imagine. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on universal pre-K? Okay.
All right,
Next,
over
everybody's
to the-
favorite, CTE.
CTE.
There we go.
Yes.
And the expand CTE facilities piece, again, would be the triangulation of data points. So we would be looking at student career interest, and they are currently taking that survey right now. There would be the needs assessment that we do for Perkins Grant, would give us a lot of information around what careers we were already providing students education for, what careers we need, and that also is aligned with the Trailblazers, which tells us what are the industries and job trends in Virginia, and even more specifically in Hampton Roads. So those data points would be triangulated together to determine what programs we would bring to you as our recommendations. And some examples of what that might include could be specializing our building trades to include HVAC, electrical, plumbing, any of those sorts of things. Building an additional welding lab. Welding is very, very popular for our students. Perhaps adding a vet assistant or a vet tech program or a medical assistant, dental assistant. I mean, the sky is the limit, really, depending on what those trades are. Just based on that data. So those are just some examples of what that might look like.
Okay.
And our students have demonstrated that there is a need for us to expand these programs just based on the fact that we are now turning kids away.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question. How many health programs do we have right now in the CTE I know CNA.
Currently just the CNA program.
Okay, because that's where I would like to see the expansion done, because we have a lot of medical
Next year, we
facilities
are
here.
set to open the patient care technician. We are hoping to open that, so that would be the next level of CNA. CNA is 1 year. They do it in their junior year. They do leave as certified nursing assistants, but then we would hope to bring on the patient care would be the next level. We would really also, on the health sciences side, be looking to bring in maybe a pre-level, a prerequisite level, maybe a medical assistant, something that students might get an introduction to medical sciences.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick question for you. On the expansion of the CTE, I know we've talked about it before, the needs assessment that went out, I forget who it was that actually said that the fire and EMS services was included on that needs survey, is that correct?
Oh, yes, sir. We gave them a list. We gave students, because we did it for all students grades 6 through 11. As Dr. Kramer tells you, you don't want to build programs that students aren't interested in.
Correct.
And so we tried to make it very simple and kind of asking them, what is it you want to be when you grow up? What are your top 3? What are the things you're leaning towards? And we put those in very clear terms for them, so that there wasn't this ambiguity of, oh, I want to go into industry. Well, what does industry mean? Kids don't usually say, well, I want to go into warehousing and logistics. So those are the types of things we wanted to break down. And things like firefighter or EMS, that's also one of the things we're kind of crossing our fingers, hoping to be able to add for the patient care would to be add like a EMT kind of thing, just based on our community need and volunteer services.
What is the suspense date on the needs assessment? When do you expect to get them back?
Well, I already have the needs assessment that I do for the state. I have to do that every 2 years. But we are waiting the career interest survey data. I should have that by the end of the month.
Yeah, I'm sorry, let me correct myself. The student interest survey, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I'll have that by the end of the month.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any more questions? If none, then thank you.
All right, and at this time is,
Yes.
now that the work session for the CIP, now it's time for the board to actually put those priorities in order.
So, if I may, because as a new board member, I've got 101 questions about
Absolutely.
money issues, as you well know, Dr. Coleman, and I appreciate you helping me out. For the people that are listening,
Yes, sir.
I I think we can all agree that we need and want a new school. In fact, I think we can agree that we need and want every one of these things.
Of course.
The sequence or the priority, we can hash that out. What I want to talk about is the cost. And so I've bent the ear of members of our Board of Supervisors. And from what I've gathered, the county, and we'll get into this more as we start working with the county, and you probably already know this, but
Absolutely.
today, the Wight County real estate tax is 85 cents for every $100 of your value of your property.
Yes, sir.
And rough math indicates that to buy a new school, the county would have to borrow money and just enough in order to service bonds to buy a new school. They're looking at roughly 20 cents additional to service bonds. So instead of 85 per 100, we'd be looking at $1.05 per $100 to service bonds for a new school. And again, we'll get into the details. There's more to follow, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows really what we're asking of the taxpayer. And I did some rough math this morning. And so if you own a home that's valued at roughly $100,000, your annual real estate tax would increase $200. If your home was valued at $200,000, your annual real estate tax would increase $400. $300,000 loan or $300,000 worth of house is going to cost you an extra $600 a year. And we can go up. If your home is worth $500,000, you're looking at an additional $1,000 per year in real estate taxes. And I don't speak for anybody but myself, but my house is roughly $272,000. In fact, I pulled up my real estate tax last night and I did the math for myself. And so I'm looking at there and about $600, between $500 and $600 a year increased in my real estate tax. I'm an open book. That's not a big deal to me, but I know there's a lot of folks that live in Wight County, 55 plus, farmers, whatnot, that are on a fixed income. And I think that's the people that we need to make sure understand what we're asking. $500 or $600 may not mean much to Jason Marsh, but it may mean a great deal to a senior citizen living on a fixed income. So I'll leave it at that. There's more discussion to follow, but I just want to make sure that I said that out loud because I think the people watching deserve to know exactly what we're asking.
And Mr. Marsh, I understand what you're saying too, but a lot of our senior citizens, especially I think if they're 65 and over, I could be wrong, the county has plans in place where if they qualify, sometimes they don't have to pay it, okay? And those that maybe is on that borderline of qualifying, they also have they put them on payment plans, those type of things. But I understand what you're saying. They may not just be able to afford it at all. But the county normally works with those senior citizens that have financial challenges, okay?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I know we're trying to wrap this session up. And you alluded to this, Dr. Coleman and Dr. Kay. Would you speak to what our next steps are? What are we requesting from the board?
The next steps for the CIP is to prioritize. Now you've presented all of the information, the numbers. So now it's time for the board to prioritize their priorities, 1, 2, 9, and then when that is presented on the next board meeting, then we'll take that to the Board of Supervisors, or we'll send that off to the Board of Supervisors.
And may I be clear, are we looking at what they're going to send forward? So are we looking at what are the items that would go forward, or are we looking at what items they're going to send forward in a specific priority order?
Yes, the latter.
The latter.
So we would send the items in order of our request by date, and then the Board of Supervisors would have the task of determining what the budgetary impact would be.
Right.
And to be clear, we're asking the board to vote at the February meeting so that this then can go forward no later than our next board meeting, which is February. I don't have the date in front of me, but at the next February, at the board meeting in February.
Yeah.
And they would have
February 9th.
So
I just wanted to be clear, that's what we're asking.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Hypothetical, I'm not committing to anything. Hypothetical, let's just say we put a new school as number 1, and we send it to the board, and the board says, no way, not happening for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
There's nothing we can do
There's nothing we can do.
because they the purse string and they the ones, we don't,
So if we know going into it that we're not going to get that wish within the next 3 to 5 years, does it make more sense? And I'm not asking for anyone to make a decision tonight, but just ask yourself, does it make more sense to prioritize something else first?
Well,
And that's the can of worms. I'm just going to leave it at that.
actually, when we send them that CIP plan, we have prioritized what we feel that we want. But then we send it to the Board of Supervisors, and they will look at that plan, but they're going to get CIPs from a whole lot of organizations, okay, that they're working with. And they're going to say, okay, we can afford this. We'll do this one. They'll break it up. It's just like you do a household budget. We can afford this month. We can afford this year. We can afford this maybe in 2 years. Maybe they'll say 2 years from now, we'll do the school. But right now, we have funding to maybe do the pre-K program. They'll break it up.
Funded in the order
I
we
think
requested.
that's one of the reasons that we plan on having that working session.
Right.
When I talked to a couple of board
That is
members
correct.
offline, that was something we wanted to talk about, so we make sure we put the right things in.
They just want to know our priorities.
So if I'm
They
going,
will try to.
I'm sorry, please. No, you can
They
go.
will try to. Previous years, they would try to work, with us with our priorities. But like I said, if the funding is not there for them, they can't do it. But they'll tell us, but we can do this.
I just wanted to clarify, in conversations with County Administrator Keaton, following our vote, we will then have some joint meetings with the Board of Supervisors, where we will have those other discussions.
And if I can add, just to piggyback on Mr. Marsh's question, it is beneficial to still put that school, let's just use the school since you used the school for an example, even if they do state that it's 4 or 5 years out, it gives us time to plan. It gives us time to plan curriculum-based and as well as the movement around. 3 to 4 years, a school being built, boom, you're getting a school built. There's a lot of more scrambling around to do than if you know that it's coming in 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, year one. It gives us time to plan. So it's not just a throwaway if we do lock that in with those bonds to get that school moving forward. Yes, sir.
And we revise and submit the CIP every 2 years? Right?
Yes,
Every 2 years. So if they didn't fund it for the next 5 years, then we could still, in 2 years, determine, is this still our number one priority? And rearrange at that time if you wanted to.
Now, what has typically been the process for past boards, and Mrs. Tynes, you may be able to answer this the best, to prioritize, because now everybody on the board, Mr. Cunningham included, needs to determine what our individual priorities are, and then we need to lump them in to get a set of board priorities. So it's kind of a twofold question. First to the attorney, do we need to do that within the confines of a meeting, or is it possible that each person send their information to the clerk compiles it, and then we come to a meeting and discuss it? I just don't know the process for the next step. For developing the priority at this point before we vote on it.
I think the board can, it's not governed by law.
Okay.
So I think whatever process works best for you all, it would be fine. The law doesn't, there's no statute to specify how the board ought to vote on the priority of CIP. So whatever the board wants to do that is the best and the most efficient way, I think that's up to the board.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think, and someone steer me right if I'm wrong, the process would be to, if whatever the decision is, someone would make motion to approve it as presented, and if that wasn't your priority, then you would make a motion to change the priority, and then we would just vote accordingly.
Well, actually, we have this is why we're having a work session today.
Yes.
And the priorities that the staff has presented to us, I don't have a problem keeping it that way because they are our top priorities for Wight County Schools. And they have presented, they did all of the work they present to us. If you want to tweak it a little bit, that's fine. But those things that they have presented today are Wight County Schools' top priorities, okay? And I feel that's what we need to send to the board like if that school needs to stay up at the top and is up to the Board of Supervisors. Like I said, if they want to decide to go forward with it, because they're the ones that's going to do the funding, okay? And that's not our priority to tell them what to do. That's up to them. But this is what we're going to send up to them. And that priority, top priority, will be the school, because with all of the development and the people that are, the students that are going to be coming into this county, we're not going to have time to wait 5 years out, okay? We're going to need to do something today, because as our staff just told us, we're going to have an issue even after the new Hardy opens up in the fall with the 4th grade, you know, because the plan, when we were planning on Hardy Elementary, was to do K4 at Carrollton and Hardy. Well, look, that has changed. So that has been the issue with planning schools. Procrastination, not just procrastination with the school board, procrastination with the Board of Supervisors. Well, I know why they procrastinate, because of the funding. But when we get these things, we need to go forward and send it to them, because they are the ones that's going to have to fund it. They need to plan it. Keep it at the top. They may move it to number 3 or 4, but at least we sent it at the top. And they will tell us why, you know, they can't do it right now, whatever.
See, I would actually argue that the Fleet Services building should be second right under the school.
Right.
I don't disagree with the school. I absolutely don't. But now we're kind of safety and security. So we've got the two, the devices, security devices, which are a priority, but also we've got the renovation of the bus garage, which I think are a higher priority than anything else behind it. So that's why I would certainly like to have discussion on this.
When we had the meeting 221, I think Mr. Wooster was with me, improved school security was not number 1. But in light of what has happened in our area in the last 2 weeks, a whole lot of school districts, they're moving it to number 1 now, because we're finding out it's not just a threat with high school, middle schools, it's a threat with all students, okay? So we have to put something in place.
Well, you know me, school security has always been my number one topic.
So this is why it has jumped to number, you know, security is important, that we get all schools secured, because the most important thing is to keep the students safe.
But I would still bump that garage
the staff can be safe
quite a
if the
bit.
students are.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I may very well be the odd person out here, but I kind of sit down and I looked at priorities which, you know, I would like to see. And again, Ms. Tynes, based on what you just mentioned, we have been very blessed thus far not to have an incident occur in Isle of Wight County.
Shh, don't say anything.
Recently, and recent events, it's hitting too close to home.
It is.
We've talked about improving school security. We've discussed different options. It's time to act. My number 1 priority would be to improve school security. We owe it to the students, we owe it to the teachers, we owe it to the staff to protect them from, you know, external threats as well as internal threats. So that would be the reasoning for my number 1.
And that's like 2.5 million, where it's going to take a whole lot more millions to do that new school.
Oh, it is.
Right. And honestly, I'm still going to be odd person out, because my second priority would be the bus garage. That has been left out, left unattended for so many years. We've got to have, you know, a means of efficiently transporting students to and from school. I don't know how many times I'm hearing about buses breaking down, issues, whatever the case may be. Number 3, expanding the CTE facilities. Now, number 4, rebuilding West Side. I don't disagree that we need another school, but due to the current finances we're looking at, I don't believe it should be number 1, even though the Board of Supervisors does determine their own priorities once they receive it. I would like to see the renovation of Smithfield High School band and chorus room is number 5. Universal pre-K is number 6. And it's a toss-up between track and football fields and baseball facilities as number 7 and 8. The reasoning behind that, I am not selling them short by no means. I'm just trying to prioritize and get the best benefit from the taxpayer dollars. Mr. Marsh, he alluded to tax increases, as a result of the new school. I've had those same conversations, with Board of Supervisors members, and I've gotten the same answers. Just to give you a prime example, I'm not hiding anything. Every 6 months, I pay a little over $2,000 in taxes every 6 months. Based on the changes to the tax rate, that would put me anywhere from $2,700 to $3,000 every 6 months is what I'd be paying in taxes.
Okay.
You've got people on fixed incomes, and I know there are, means of assistance, but you can't rely on that. Do we really want to tax people out of their homes? I don't. So that is my rationale. That is my personal order of priorities. And that's pretty much where I stand.
I'm hoping that we can send it up there with the new school, bus garage, and security, and all of it is funded at the same time. I'm just asking for a happy.
I would agree with Mrs. Tynes. School security, bus garage, and new school would probably be my top 3.
Yeah.
As well. CTE definitely number 4. And I could live with the other 4 in the same order that Mr. Worcester provided. But I think, school security, that new school, which we're going to build security into it, and bus garage for the safety of the people that we've got working on those buses and the safety of the children that are going to be riding in those buses, as well as the staff that drives the cars.
And I'm talking about I'm also talking about the security for the building.
Yes.
Students and staff.
So that's my personal priorities would be, the top 3 would be school security, bus garage, new school.
Uh-huh.
Can we agree on the top 3?
I have no problem switching my number 3 and 4.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm looking at Mr. Cunningham. He's not here tonight, but he did send in an email, and he concurred with the division's recommendation, number 1 being the school, 2 being security, 3 being bus garage. So I want to make sure that he had his voice heard tonight, even though he's not here.
Actually, I'm thinking the security piece is going to be a no thinker for all, for us as well as the Board of Supervisors. They know we have to do that. Okay. Even with them approving the developments that come in here, they're going to know, okay, we have to get this new school going.
Right.
They know this too.
Yes.
And the bus garage, we need that too. Okay. So that's why I say put it together. Put it together and send it together, and is 1, 2, and 3, but they all go together in order to improve instructions in our Wight County schools.
Absolutely.
Can we all agree security is number 1?
Yes.
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 Number 2, bus garage.
Well, the reason I say, because they're both construction, and I hope they go together, because even with the new school, if we wait on it, even the Board of Supervisors, it's not going to get any cheaper. Because building materials are not going to go back where it used to be before the pandemic. It's going to either stay where it is or get higher. So, and we know development is going to happen in this county. So, I mean, it's up to them to decide, hey, we're gonna fund it, but it needs to be funded.
I'd say they're an equal priority.
Let me throw this football in there. And I'm gonna piggyback on you, Ms. Hines. I like the idea of working with the county and coming up with a plan to migrate our facilities for maintenance. So I'm gonna propose that we make security 1, school number 2, knowing in the back of our mind it's not likely,
Right.
and let's put that bus garage in there, but let's preface it with the intent of sitting down with the county and saying, hey, let's find a way to put this together and save all of us some money. I don't know where the county does their vehicle maintenance. I don't know. Is it in the same spot?
They source it out to mechanic, mechanic.
So I think that's worthy of a conversation. And Dr. Kramer?
No, I was just going to ask Dr. Coleman to respond to your question.
It's sourced out. It's not done at the annex. It's sourced out.
And the 2 towns source theirs out as well. They bid on it every so often.
It just seems like that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. You got that, Jessica?
So can we agree, security, school,
And bus garage.
vehicle maintenance, facility, bus garage,
Transportation, right.
transportation?
Yep.
And I think as Chair Colick mentioned earlier, Vice Chair Marsh, I think that's a discussion we can have at the joint meetings. And so that'll give you the opportunity to present this new plan.
If I may, we can't list it as maintenance. Maintenance cannot be included in a CIP. Unless you're talking about a maintenance facility. So
Well,
I
that's what
just
it
want to
is.
be
That's
clear.
what I meant to say, yes.
We can't.
But we can say
include people.
transportation.
Right, or
Right.
we're talking about the facility. I just want to be specific.
And we just send 3 items up to them?
I think you can send whatever you so desire.
Right.
Your other board. So
It's
Throw CTE in there,
literally
too.
yours to send up. It's yours to send up to the Board of Supervisors.
They'll allow us up to 7 or 8, which helps them for long-term planning as well.
Well, we have enough for them to think on.
If the 4 of us tonight can agree on security, a new school, and a new fleet services facility, that's a top 3 I think we can agree on. We may get adjusted when we go see those gentlemen.
Yeah.
So,
And honestly, I think as a school division, we probably need to put together, a plan for a long-term capital improvement plan as well, so that we have a better idea from year to year what is going to be next. Based on ages of some of our capital items, what's coming up that we're going to need that we don't have. Input from the principals, input from the directors, and get a good understanding of what we as a county need in the schools. With the bulk, in my opinion, with the bulk of the suggestions and information coming from the schools, from the principals and the teachers, and then filtering its way up, so that I think we'll just get a better feel for putting together a good long-term plan, and it won't take us nearly as long in the future to do this.
I like that too, and I'm gonna tell you, we have 9 schools now. We already ready for number 10, and it's gonna be in that northern end in District 2. Because Carrollton, like she said, has.
We're gonna need it.
And we can't expand on that property because of wetland and all. So there will definitely, it's gonna have to be another school built in that district somewhere. So as soon as they finish the one that we need here, the middle school, they're gonna need to be in the process of starting the plans for the new school in District 2.
Yep, I agree. So anyway, I think we've come to a point where we have agreed to our top 3, and we'll go ahead and move forward, Dr. Kramer, with that. And we will take a recess, a 10-minute recess.
Yes, I got it.
The time right now is 5:23. We'll be back at 5:33.
Thank you.
session. I just want to remind everybody that the discussion that we just had about the capital improvement plan, that vote will take place at the next meeting in February. So we'll all be there. Mr. Cunningham will be there, and then we will vote on whether or not we're going to send these priorities up to the Board of Supervisors. And next, we're going to have a slight modification to the agenda. So if I can get the Vice Chair to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to table the discussion for the proposed bylaws to a date to be determined later. Good. Yep, just like that.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? There is no discussion. The clerk will take the vote.
Mr. Wooster?
Yay.
Mr. Colick?
Yay.
Mr. Marsh?
Yay.
And Mrs. Tynes?
Yay.
Okay, next we're going to talk about policy IIA. That's everybody's favorite policy of the week. Mr. Wooster is going to go ahead and start off the discussion.
All right. Okay. For the past, I don't know exactly the time frame, but for the past probably year and a half or so, there have been issues with parent concerns about instructional material, depending on, whether it be sexually explicit or considered divisive. This process, went through many appeals through the KLB process. Sometimes there was, successful findings. The bottom line is not all the filters or, any protective means that we put in place will always prohibit, or I shouldn't say prohibit, but prevent this material from being displayed to our students. There have been a lot of concerns over policy IIA, which was submitted for first read. There was a lot of concern if it was restricting certain types of material that it would affect the AP programs. That never was nor is the intent of the policy. Now, when I campaigned, there were a multitude of people, and I would even go as far as to say the good majority of people that I spoke with, that do not want sexually explicit material in schools. Now, with that being said, I've been asked multiple times, what is the definition of sexually explicit material or sexually explicit content? And I do not remember the code right off the top of my head. Pac, if you do, please join in, but it's defined in the Code of Virginia. I have it. Oh, you do?
I have all of that on a slide whenever you're ready for it.
Okay. Okay, but that is defined in the Code of Virginia. The other definition dealing with inherently divisive content, that definition in the policy was taken verbatim from Governor Youngkin's Executive Order 1. So that's where those definitions came from. Myself nor anybody up here created those definitions nor pulled them out of thin air. The AP programs were never intended to be included in that. I have no intentions of backing away from restricting sexually explicit or inappropriate material being displayed to our students. That does not mean that, I'm unwilling to compromise on things. One of the issues was possibly changing the language in the policy to clarify things a bit better. So that's pretty much what I have done at this point. And I will let you go ahead and get your presentation going.
Okay, thank you. I know we'll have some discussion. Before we get to the discussion, I would like to just share some things that for everyone to know what got us to this point. and then we can take questions and have some discussion. Before I begin, I know you know me. You may not know Tiffany Truitt. She's our coordinator for secondary English and history. So she's been doing a lot of work around this, and so I would like for her to be here as well to answer some questions. Okay, thank you. All righty. So I'm going to skip to this point. So Governor Youngkin brought this about, as I'm sure you well know, and so the Code of Virginia was modified. And in modifying that, this is the exact code, and there are some definitions that I would like to talk about too. But the principles, the specifics of this code involves parental notification, directly identifying the specific instructional material and sexually explicit subjects, and then permitting the parent of any student to review the instructional material that concludes this sexually explicit content, and then to provide an alternative for that parent, for that student, for whose parents request that. So the guiding principles, and these are taken directly from Governor Youngkin's model policy. The parental right to make decisions with respect to their child. The policies empower parents to exercise their right to decide whether the use of sexually explicit content in instructional materials is appropriate for their child. The policies reflect confidence in parents, respect for parent decision-making, and respect for parents' rights to protect their children's innocence. So that was the whole premise behind the model policy that we did adopt back in November. I know some of you were not on the board, but we adopted the model policy. The model policy had to go into effect by January 1. So we are at January 19th. Our model policy went into effect January 1 of this year. The model policy includes notifying parents of sexually explicit content 30 days in advance and giving the parents the option to opt out. And I will say to date, we have one such case where we have notified parents of sexually explicit content to allow them the option to opt out of that book. I also want to point out that in the model policy, it does state a school board's compliance shall not be construed to require or provide for the one, censoring of books in public elementary or secondary schools, or two, the designation of instructional materials as sexually explicit based solely upon the sexual orientation of the characters contained. So again, kind of looking at what that model policy stated, any content used by students, and I'm not going to read through all of this, but it's the format of what is instructional material. And you can see it covers everything, printed to digital. Library materials as a whole are not considered instructional materials unless a teacher would be to assign something from the library, for a grade. Then it would be considered instructional material. And also note that extracurricular activities would be included. And then any other division assessments or things that we've created also would be included as needing parental notification. The thing that was exempt would be national or state assessments, such as the ACT, SAT, NAEP, AP, or SOL exams. And I know we heard a lot about AP exams. Those are exempt. The concern was the AP content in order to prepare students for those exams. So some of the AP content would fall under sexually explicit and under your policy, the divisive content. Not the exam, but the content. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the definition, because I have heard some terms going around, and I just want to point out some things. So I heard pornography. We don't want our students exposed to pornography. And I may be going out on a limb, but I think every parent would agree that we do not want our students exposed to pornography in school. I think that's probably safe. I may be wrong, but I'm going to say yes. However, when you look at this definition, the definition does not include the term pornography. In fact, there is the definition. Most of those things you're never going to run into in our content, in any of our instructional materials. In fact, I had to Google some of them. You're never going to run across those in our instructional materials. The one item where it says sexual conduct, I really needed more clarification. So we actually have that in the code. It actually, if you go to another place, it defines what sexual conduct is. And I think this is where it's a little broader, and it may or it will encompass some of the materials that are used. And if you kind of take a look at that and read what that is, it is broader than the previous definition of what is sexually explicit. So when you use that definition, and that's what we've asked teachers to do, look at this definition, what I just shared with you, and then go deeper and look at this, looking at your content, what does this mean for you? And I think that's where we run into some of our issues, quite honestly, of what might be excluded. And I won't go through all of these definitions, but this is everything that the code gives you to explain how every single thing is defined in the policy. What I would like to talk about are some of the unintended consequences. I know I've spoken to each one of you about, the intent. The intent is to protect children. There are unintended consequences when you take the definition of the policy and you apply it to all of our instructional programs. And so I would like to just run briefly through what are some of those unintended consequences. And this is not Susan Getz's thoughts. Let me be very, very clear. This is staff. I've talked to administrators, teachers. I want to share with you what they have shared with us so that you have a clear picture of how everyone feels. Again, this is our staff. This is not reflective of parents, okay? So obviously there's an impact on AP curriculum. You heard that loud and clear. One thing that we did not talk about is dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is college credit. It's college courses. They do not fall under Governor Youngkin's policy, so they will not adhere to that. They are going to teach what they are going to teach. And if a student chooses not to enroll because they don't want to be exposed to that content, that would have to be their choice. But we cannot change what the college is requiring us to teach. The other thing is Virtual Virginia. We do use Virtual Virginia. Virtual Virginia is following the model policy. So their policy is the model policy that I just shared 30 days in advance. They have parents notified of the content. Parents can opt out. It does not include anything inherently divisive in their policy. It is the straight up model policy. Okay? Questions? Yep. Or should I go on and then answer the questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'm stopping.
I don't know who put this together, but kudos to you, whoever did it. Let's talk about let me back up. So I'm going to echo what Mr. Rooster said, and this isn't anything that you, Mrs. Getz, or anyone else here hasn't already heard. This is for the people paying attention right now.
Yes.
And especially the teachers that may or may not feel micromanaged or devalued. So the main reason I'm sitting up here tonight is because for 18 months, I sat down there and brought concerns to this body about stuff that I found. And I've got examples that I will share with anyone that wants to see it. You've seen it, Mr. Kramer's seen it. I think everybody in here has seen it. I have yet to share those examples with anyone who's looked at me square in the eye and said, you know what, that's good stuff. We need to make sure that's in the schools. To your credit, Mrs. Getz, I think, in large part, the lion's share of that stuff is gone. The Read Woke Challenge is no longer hanging on the Smithfield High School website. Bravo. I didn't ban the books. I never wanted to ban the books. What I don't want is Wight County Schools promoting a book that is contrary to the values of the majority of the people in Wight County. And I don't have any reservations about saying that out loud. E-media. WHRO has made some positive improvements to filter a lot of the stuff that was discovered. Stuff that I saw on my daughter's tablet when she brought home during COVID, I almost lost my mind. And we've had these conversations. WHRO, kudos to you. Are there going to be hiccups in the future? Probably. Technology changes. We'll work through it. TED Ed, gone. Good riddance. Discovery Education, that's a $60,000 subscription. I've got no reservations about washing it away. Can kids still access it? Yes. But we're not paying for it. And we're not teaching from it. What else here? There's a bunch of examples. So for the people listening, I want everybody to know that this didn't come from nothing. We're trying to put a policy together not to remove stuff that exists today, but to make sure that it stays out. And it shouldn't take a group of parents 12 plus months, and I'll say a group of raging mad parents 12 plus months screaming at a school board and pleading with administrators to get it out of the schools. The hope and intent of this policy isn't to tie anyone's hands, but to make sure that we set guidelines with policy. And that's what the school board does. We set policy that gives the superintendent and his staff guidelines. So I'll shift back to your unintended consequences. So the first one, your impact on AP, dual enrollment, and virtual Virginia. I'm confident that we can adjust verbiage to make sure that that's not applicable. Teachers may be reluctant to teach topics that are critical to success in the AP and SOL exams. Again, I know we can do some adjustments to the verbiage to make sure that no one is reluctant to do it.
Can I comment on that, please?
Absolutely.
So I think when teachers feel very uneasy right now, they feel that they are going to be criticized so heavily that they are literally backing away from teaching things that might fall under this. And I'm going to give you a very real example. A teacher had planned to teach The Handmaid's Tale. They are no longer teaching it. We have not told them you cannot teach it. But the fear and the anxiety that they are going to be scrutinized and questioned. Teachers are rule followers for the most part. Not all of us, but many of us. We like to please. We like to follow the rules. They don't want controversy. They don't want to get into an argument or a debate about whether or not something would fall under this policy or not. And so I think an unintended consequence is I'm not teaching anything at all if it's going to be questioned. I'm just going to stay away from it.
Okay, and I respect that. And like Mr. Wooster, I'm not unwilling to compromise. There's got to be some happy ground in the middle. We can find it. Teachers may feel micromanaged and devalued.
Yes.
I get it. No one wants to be micromanaged. But again, last year, I've got a handout, and I'll put it up on the screen if anybody wants to see it. It was in a Spanish class in a middle school where a teacher handed a handout to the kids asking them to rank social justice issues. Nothing to do with learning Spanish. Yet that particular teacher, who I understand is now gone, took it upon herself to push that into class. So, water under the bridge, it's gone, good. But again, the hope here is to establish some guidelines, not to micromanage, but to establish guidelines.
And I remember that worksheet as well. It was questionable, I agree. It was one teacher. It was one example. I know we've talked about some of the examples you brought to us. Yes, you did find those on your child's iPad. Yes. They were not anything that was assigned because it probably was not age appropriate for your child. Were they able to be accessed by all students K through 12? They were. That was your problem because your child was able to access it. But it wasn't an assignment because teachers want you to trust them that they know what's appropriate for a 5-year-old versus what's appropriate for a 15-year-old. And they're feeling not trusted.
I agree with you, Mrs. Getz. I agree with you 150%. And on that same note, if I can sit here and comfortably say I don't think anybody was teaching it, it shouldn't be a big deal to make it go away.
What you were talking about, not a big deal at all. I haven't heard a peep. I mean, WHRO, we have restrictions, not one peep.
We seem to be getting focused on the books, right?
Yes.
And so let me get there.
Yes.
Let me get off my little stump speech here because I've been waiting for this for almost 2 years now. It requires extra time of teachers to review books for explicit or divisive content. I only speak for Marsh, but I think there is no expectation to have this done instantaneously. This will have to happen over time. Prince William County Schools just implemented a similar policy, and they gave their schools up until the start of the next school year to have some sort of a list published. I think that's worthy of discussion. Is it another administrative burden? Yes. I get it. We got plenty of administrators, and our administrators get paid well. It just is what it is. I'm up here fighting for this for roughly $3,000 a year. You folks are getting paid big bucks, and it sucks if we're putting an additional burden on the administrators, but I think it's necessary, and I think we owe it to the constituents.
It's not about, and please, it is not about, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I am concerned about the extra burden on our teachers who already, I know you know this, teaching right now is not easy. It's gotten harder. Our teachers are, you talk to any teacher, they're stressed, they feel overworked, they're trying to recover from, learning loss, this, that, and another. They're burdened on their time. So now we are now saying we now have to screen to make sure anything sexually explicit, which we have to do, that's the law, but that in addition to things that are divisive on a topic that is at best extremely subjective. Even the amount of time in my office that we've gathered around a table to look at what we consider sexually explicit or divisive, none of us agree. None of us.
So,
And
yes,
so
I don't want to put an undue burden on any more teachers. You're right, they are overtaxed. I get that. I don't want to tax these teachers. But I still want to find a way to make this happen. And so my plea to you moving forward, Mrs. Getz, is going to be help me and the rest find a way, okay? Please don't fight us on this. Help us find a proper answer to get this nailed down to what we want. Even you, Mrs. Tynes, I know you said the other night that you wouldn't approve it any way the way it was written, and I respect that. So let's work together to find a way forward. Look, one second, please. Mr. Wooster has submitted some revisions, and part of his solution, and I think it's going in the right direction, was to do an exception based off grade level. So let's give a little bit more leniency to high school and up, right? So that just makes more sense because a lot of the books and concerns are English, right? Second.
And history.
History and English, right?
Yes.
I think the lion's share of people would agree that middle school down, it's really not called for. There's got to be a way forward. I'm going to propose, in addition to what Mr. Wooster submitted, I had a constituent reach out and basically rethought the whole policy and included policy INB, Indian November Bravo, which talks specifically about teaching controversial issues. In my mind, and again, I'm only speaking for myself because we're just working this out. I think a solution is a combination of setting grade levels on what is and is not accessible, and then we need to form a committee. Folks like yourself, teachers, school board members, parents, let's get a group of people together to help determine what is and is not appropriate, because certainly what's appropriate to me may not be to anybody else. We've all got our own goggles, so to speak. So possibly a grade level separator there, form a committee, and then let's work on policy I and B and kind of pull it all in together. That's where I'm at right now. So I don't think this is an all or nothing. I think there's got to be a happy middle. I think we can accomplish the goal and make sure that our middle school to pre-K don't have access or exposure to any of this. Let's set boundaries, what they can and cannot be taught. And then for the high school kids, let's look at what they're exposed to, and then sure, let's make a list. Let's make sure that the parents know, even the parents of AP students. I'm pretty sure that my daughter's going to be an AP student. That kid is smart. And when she's in high school, I would be appreciative if her English teacher said, hey, Marsh, Tinley's going to be reading this book. Are you okay with this? Absolutely, she's there. Or at least I have the chance to say no. And so that's my envision moving forward. I don't see leaving here tonight with a solution, but I hope that we can leave here tonight with some sort of a agreement on how to make this come together. And I'll shut up for now and let you guys talk, but that's just where I'm at. Yes, ma'am. It's a lot, huh?
No, it's not a lot, because I can leave here tonight with a solution. And the solution is, same thing I had at our board meeting last week. This board has brought havoc to the foundation of Wight County Schools instructional classrooms, instructions, period. I never thought I would see the day that we would be sitting here trying to censor what children are going to read. That's where the parents come in for. We have options. If you don't want your child to participate in a classroom activity, if you don't want them to read a particular book or whatever, go to that school, fill out the paperwork, and your child will not be involved. We have 6,000 and some kids enrolled in Wight County Schools. And they are the sum that want to make the decision for the other 6,000 children. And that's where I am right now. That should happen. And you brought up the example, the school district, King Williams or someplace. I deal with the school districts that our students are going to come in contact with. Williamsburg, James City, Gloucester, all of those areas. Franklin City, Southampton, because they are all neighboring school districts. Surrey County. Those school districts are not having an issue. We put a policy in place, the board that was sitting there, but I know some of you do not recognize that board because of the color, and I'm going to continue with that too. We put it in place for the students, and they started, the staff as well as the students, that's what they've been using since January 1. It wasn't an issue until the new members of the board came on board and brought all of these ideas. That's why it's important when school board is a little different from other public offices, because you're dealing with young minds. And when you come to any organization that you have never been involved with before, the best thing to do is to sit down, listen, and ask questions. Don't come immediately trying to change an organization that was built and has been built in this county for years. People worked hard to get us where we are today. I am proud of Wight County Schools. I cannot say it enough. I sit here today with you because I am a product of Wight County Schools. No one censored what we were doing then. Some of the same things, books that are on this list, we used those materials then. Okay, now another thing, I'm an IT person myself. A lot of you don't know that. I got my graduate degree in technology. I was just here trying to send a message out. I couldn't get it out of this building, okay? The students that come in this building, they're not going to be able to Google all of these things that you all been finding in your homes with your own Wi-Fi. If you go and seek something, you will find it. My child, when she was in school, she didn't seek those things. Yes, and computers were out while she was in school as well. And she didn't seek those things because it was not a part of her environment. Okay? So she didn't go out and seek the negative things. But, of course, being in school with some of her peers, she heard about certain things. But my child came home and talked to her parents about it. And we sat down and had those parent conversations. See, parents need to play their role too. When your child come in, the devices that our Wight County Schools, I guess, loan your child, instructional devices. You are responsible for that child while they're in your home. Our staff is responsible for those children while they're in school. We have not, that I know of, had any problems with children getting into those areas where they're not supposed to be. Most of the comments we got, and I listened very well. Well, they actually told us, I went in there and I found this. Yes, you found it. You're an adult. You were looking for it. But will your child be looking for it? And no, they're not going to look for it at school because they can't get into it. Thank you, because of our IT department. My feelings, and I said it the other night, let Dr. Kramer do his job, and he has been doing it well. I asked him if he would form a committee of students, staff, and parents. Sit down, look at what was presented, see if they can work with it, and present it to the board. No, we don't need to be part of that committee, the board members. Bring back to the board what you all decide. But from this point on, we had something in place January 1st. It's going to impact a lot of students if we try to change something mid-course. This is what's happening. You don't change things mid-year. If you want to change something in a school district, you do it July 1, okay? That's after school close in June. So I will propose that we leave things the way they are. Let everybody continue to work on what the board voted on in November. That's pretty much what the governor will agree with us too, because that was his plan. And just leave it there. Let the committee work it out. That Dr. Kramer will work with the committee, come back to the board if you don't bring it back until June or whatever. We have July and August to vote on it, to put it in place to start their next school year. We just can't upset these people mid-course. You heard these people when they came here. Yes, 20 people, 25, maybe 40 the most, I'm not going to give you more than that, came up here. They were upset. But did you see the ones that came up here at our meeting last month? Well, this month? Okay, listen to them. They told you what they wanted, okay? And I'm going to be honest with you. I just feel we need to leave everything in place the way it is. And going forward, if you want to make changes, fine. Let that committee make the changes, because it's going to be, it's for the students, and the staff is going to be working with the students, and the parents is going to play a major role as well. Let those three let that group get together and come back to the board and present something to us, okay? That's what we need. We are not going to censor what these children need to be learning today. That's up to the parents to do in their home with them, to censor them. We sending these kids out here in the world, and we send them out there in the world to compete with all the children from around the world, and they won't get into class, university. First year university, our students going to sit in class because they didn't have an opportunity to read some, because they had some board members that said they didn't want them to do it, or they didn't have a chance to the teacher that couldn't teach them something because they were afraid. And that's another thing. It is very hard to get teachers now, and especially the good ones. And we have good ones here, and I would like to keep them here, retain them. But the rate we're going now, don't go down that road, because we're going to lose a lot of staff. And that's going to be another major problem. I've already heard of people leaving, and they don't have any reason. They'll go right across, they'll go to Suffolk, Newport News, wherever, and get jobs. They will. They're not going to put up with this foolishness, okay?
So
It's-
you call it foolishness, Mrs.
well,
Tynes,
that's exactly what it is,
You
foolishness.
haven't even bothered to take the time to look at my revision. So a lot of
You
the
know
stuff
what?
you're saying
It's
has
nothing-
merit.
I'm not going to look at anything that I see all this red in because it's nothing. There was nothing wrong that we put there in November of 2022.
Then we'll have to
Nothing
agree
was
to
wrong
disagree.
with it. Nothing
We
was
will
wrong
move
with
forward.
it. Nothing was wrong with it. And that's what is, I feel is all political. It's all political. Back off because John Collick, Mr. Collick, I told you when you came on the board last year, a school board is no place for politics. And it's just like trying to mix oil and water. It's just not going to work. It's all about politics. Let the people in Richmond do their job. Let the people in Washington do their job. Our job is to have instructions for our students here in Isle of Wight County. And that's what we have been doing, and we've been doing an excellent job. We have done our job well. Thank you. That's what we need to continue to do. And in order to continue to do it, we need to follow the policies, the plan that we put in place and adopted November of 2022. We need to stay on course, if for nothing else, for the rest of this year. And my thing is, let that committee of those people that it's going to impact bring it back to us after they work it out. This is what we want. If they come with that's already out there, fine. If they decide to mix it, we'll do some of this, we'll do some of that, which is some of yours, that's fine too. But let them do it. We're not changing anything right now, okay? Because it would not be fair to the students, it would not be fair to the staff, and it's not financially fair for the parents, okay? Because they have put a lot of money out there this year for some of these students. I'm finished, and like I tell you, I'm not going to change. I am an educator, and I know the importance of educating students. You cannot educate a child holding things back.
If I may. I don't have the eloquent speaking nature of my counterpart, Mr. Marsh, I'm sorry. See? I'm a direct person, could be due to the nature of my job. So some people may take things incorrectly versus how they're intended. Ms. Tynes, what you just discussed to me, that is reminiscent of inaction of previous boards. This right here, what we're talking about, is being proactive versus reactive. I can't understand why anyone would have an issue with preventing or restricting on grade level. Like Mr. Marsh said, we haven't even gotten into any of the revisions that we have started. So no one knows what we're talking about yet. But how can anyone be okay with just arbitrarily going, okay, we don't care, maybe it's there, maybe it's not? I just don't understand that. To me, we owe it to the students, especially the younger students. They don't need to be exposed to this. It serves absolutely no purpose in the education of our students. The only time anything pertaining to, a sexual nature would come up would be an anatomy and physiology class, sex education, things of that nature. A biology class. That's the only time it should come up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Rooster, I think you're exactly right. I don't think any third grade teacher wants to teach 1984, The Handmaid's Tale, to any of those students. I don't think there's any disagreement there. It is mainly ninth grade and above that we are talking about. So I agree with you. I don't think there's any disagreement. I think what the teachers would say, we're not teaching that to students. We're not going to do that.
That's great. If they're not, I applaud them. But what if? To me, we need to have something, in place that ensures parents that will not happen. And as a matter of fact, since you mentioned it, in my revision, and I'm sorry, you said what grades were affected through that?
9 through 12. is 9 through 12
Okay.
have the most objection.
Okay, so one of my revisions, and I will read it out loud right now. The Wight County School Board ensures parental notification at least 30 days prior to the use of any instructional material that includes sexually explicit content and/or inherently divisive content in grades 9 through 12, allowing parents the ability to opt in. Now, would you have any issues with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could you please explain?
Yes. Opting in will create a paperwork nightmare for our teachers. It is hard enough to get a parent note to say a student was absent. To ask teachers to wait to instruct until every parent either opts in or opts out will be a nightmare for them. They will essentially have to plan 2 entirely separate lessons, one lesson for all of the parent notes that they received to opt in, and then another whole lesson for those that the parents either didn't get the message, didn't do it, the student never returned it. There's a whole host of reasons it doesn't get back to the teacher, but the teacher then has to plan another lesson. What the teacher's going to do, I'm not teaching it, forget it, it's too much paperwork. I'm just going to teach something that doesn't require that notification. I want to be honest with you about the reality.
Can you
in a
offer an
classroom.
alternative solution?
I think the opt-out is a perfect solution.
So the same verbiage, but
Yes.
instead of opt-out, or opt-in, opt-out.
Yes.
That's the current policy.
And that's what we have now, opt-out.
Well,
I understand what you're saying. You're saying
changes
eliminate.
for grade level.
Right. I think for the sexually explicit, I think that's probably a workable solution. I am concerned about the inherently divisive content because I'm struggling to understand what exactly you mean when you say, I don't want inherently divisive. I need to understand, by nature of some of the coursework that we do, comparative politics, it's divisive. Debate, it's divisive. So I would need, and I think the teachers need more information. What do you mean specifically? Like, can you give me specific examples?
Yeah. Does anybody, either one of y'all have the definition with you?
Not
Yes, I do.
readily
Yeah.
available. While you're getting that, I'd like to say a couple of things. I spent all weekend really reviewing emails and watching the videos of the meeting several times. And one thing that came to me was the parents, who continually said parental rights, were saying the exact same thing that I said last year as a lone voice on the board when we talk about the mask mandate. Parental rights is very important, okay? I agree with that. We do have to reconcile making sure we don't have any type of graphic, lewd, lascivious materials, that students can get. And I don't think we have them. But like Mr. Worcester said, we want to make sure they don't come in. Now, my youngest daughter, when she was in high school, she was in the International Baccalaureate program. She read a number of books on the focus of the family banned list. I looked at every one of them and didn't find a single one of them objectionable to me. Were they provocative? Absolutely. Were they objectionable for a high school student? I personally don't think so. Again, she was in a very high-level class. I think a compromise, would definitely come into place. I think what Mr. Worcester said is something I would support. Again, she was in high school going through that, and I think that would be ideal. Now, when we come to the inherently divisive materials, in some cases, that's in the eyes of the beholder. I don't think that should be part of a sexually explicit policy. I think that needs a very good and very deep conversation with people in the community, with people from the schools, and with the board members, because we're going to have people who are on one side of political spectrum saying this is divisive, somebody on the other side saying this is divisive. And folks, we need to come in the middle. So I'd really like to see that piece of the policy pulled out. And then the piece with 9 through 12, I could definitely support. Mr. Marsh?
Can we put something up on the screen? Mr. IT back there.
If you can send it to, okay, you already have.
We've already worked this out.
Oh, all right then.
I hope. So, screen.
Yeah, go for it. While we're doing that, Mr. Worcester's going to speak.
All right. First off, I don't want you to take this as a third degree or an attack by no means. But I think this is, a productive back and forth what we're having currently.
Yes.
So we're good with the grades 9 through 12 with the opt-out portion, correct?
Parents can opt out
Okay.
of sexually explicit material.
Okay. So it continues, the Wight County School Board ensures alternative instructional material shall be provided in grades 9 through 12 in a non-punitive manner for students whose parents opt out to the use of the objectionable material.
I agree.
Okay. The other portion to that, and it does have inherently divisive content wording in it. I am not opposed to having the inherently divisive content taken completely out of this policy and, used in a different policy if need be. I am not opposed to that. This one, it reads, the Wight County School Board ensures sexually explicit content, and I'll just leave out the inherently divisive, will be restricted from use in instructional material used as part of a student's curriculum in grades K through 8.
Yes, I mean, the only exception would be like family life. But I think that's a standard, yes.
That was going to be my next question, because, it's been quite a while since I've been in school. I graduated in '86. In what grade level do students start getting into, family life, sex education, things of that nature?
I mean, it's third, fourth,
Third and fourth grade.
We do have an
But
opt-out.
it's
in place.
obviously not what we're talking about.
It is, no, sir.
Okay.
It's on their instructional level.
And it is already, it's an opt-out already that's been in place
Yeah.
for many,
Okay.
many, many years.
It's been there since day one.
Yes.
Okay.
When they started it in Virginia.
And
We've
I
always
will
had a
add, just for
choice.
your information, if a student is in family life, everything that we use to teach family life is provided to parents up front for them to review, and then they can choose to opt out, just so you know.
Right. So basically, with that one change and the change in language from the previous version, we're in agreement on this policy now, right?
I believe so.
Because nothing else has changed. It just, same as the other one did, it speaks on a method of identifying the
Yes.
material and so
Yep.
forth and so on. Now, I don't mean to take up Mr. Marsh's time here, but I do have one question that has been eating at me,
Okay?
and that's dealing with the AP programs.
Yes.
Now, I understand, the College Board controls that. Wight County Schools has no control over them whatsoever. The main concern with policy IIA was the removal or prohibition on some material that, would be required in an AP program. However, under the current policy right now, that's in existence. If a student is in an AP program, their parent can opt them out of any material contained in that AP program that they see unfit.
Yes, sir.
How does that affect the AP program that student is in?
It's a good question. So if a parent chooses to opt out, the teacher will provide an alternative. What is the impact? The student may be at a detriment on the AP exam, but that is the parent's choice.
That's the key word there is
Fair enough.
choice.
It's the parent's choice. I do want to be clear that with dual enrollment, there is not an opt-out for dual enrollment. Dual enrollment are college courses that we teach. There is not an opt-out. The only opt-out is a parent could decide, I don't want my child taking a dual enrollment class because I don't want them exposed. So what I would like to suggest is, may we rework the policy with some of the things that we've just talked about to then share with you, in prior to the next board meeting, so that we can make sure that, the language is included. But of course, with your review.
I think that's why we're sitting here now. I mean, I only speak for Marsh, but that's what I asked from the onset. Help us figure this out.
I think we have a little better understanding, and what we needed was probably this to have some clarity. And I think we have some clarity, and I think me and my staff, we could go forward and work on something that I think would be acceptable. Dr. Kramer, I'm sorry, I think you were going to talk.
Yeah, so a number of you alluded to this, and I think you got around to this just a moment ago, Mrs. Getz, and that is, it's important that our community has say, that their voices are heard, and I respect that. I think you are listening to people. But I do think it benefits us, and I think it would behoove us to give stakeholders an opportunity to co-construct a policy that would be acceptable to all. And it's not going to be easy, but to your point, that middle ground is where we hope to arrive at. So I would suggest to the board, give us an opportunity to have a committee consisting of school system personnel, central office, school-based, community stakeholders, and I think we can think through who those stakeholders should be. I do have work in this area. I've engaged in this work in other school systems in Maryland where, unlike the state of Virginia that does a really good job of providing model policies, we didn't get that in Maryland, so we had to create our own. So we had to put committees together to do this work. I would hope that we are allowed to do that, and again, that gives our community stakeholders an opportunity to have voice, to have some say in whatever a final product looks like. Obviously, it's going to have to come back before this board for a final vote, so you'll get a chance to have a final vote on it. But I do think it would benefit us, and I think it would mitigate, as I shared with you in an unrelated email, I think it would mitigate some of the challenges we've been confronting and some of the contentious discussions we've been having if we bring a diverse group of thinkers, different perspectives together in a facilitated process to bring back to you a policy that I think could be acceptable to all. So I would welcome that opportunity.
Dr. Kramer, I'm sorry, Des.
No, you're good.
I for one welcome that. I'm a huge advocate of getting buy-in from the stakeholders. I lost my train of thought, so.
And you'll think of it and you'll cut me off and just chime in when you do. What I would say, though, is this process would take time, and I probably would differ with Mrs. Guest just a little bit. I think it would be difficult to do that thoroughly and in an authentic fashion prior to the next board meeting. So if we were to convene a group of individuals to come together, I think it's going to take us some time to do that thoroughly. And again, the work that I've done previously, it's taken months actually, before we can bring back, it may not take months here because we've thought through some of this, but I think it would take more than the next few weeks to convene a group of individuals from, again, different perspectives, different viewpoints to do this work thoroughly. So I would ask for a bit more time than prior to the next board meeting.
And this is what we did to come up with our strategic plan. It didn't happen overnight. That took an entire year. And we brought all of those people together that Dr. Kramer just mentioned, and we came up with a great strategic plan to follow. That's all I ask. Leave the plan that we have now in place. Let them finish up the school year with it. Do what Dr. Kramer has just suggested. Bring these people together, which I said that as well, and work on a plan. Bring it, present it to us, their plan. That will be the parents, staff, students, and community stakeholders, if you want them in here as well. I don't care. Bring it back to us, because we are preparing the students of Isle of Wight County for college, career, and life. They should play a major role. Those people should play a major role in that. And they are the ones that should come back with that plan. This is what we want. This is what we want taught to our students. These are the policies, okay? Bring it back to us. And that's what we need. There's only 5 people on this board. And we heard the voices last week, what they were looking for. Let them be the parents. Let them be the students. And I was so proud of our students, proud of those students coming up here. And they did excellent, great jobs. Awesome to all of the staff out there that helped these kids stand before a school board, and their public speaking skills. I would give all of them an A+, because I know adults that cannot do that. And these are adults that's walking around here with college degrees, cannot do that. But those students did it because they wanted us to know that it's their life we're talking about, not ours, okay? Thank you.
Pac, I do have a question on committees.
Yes, sir.
Does that take the whole board, or can the chair appoint a committee?
Dr. Kramer will appoint that committee.
Well,
the board won't have anything
I
to do
think
with
the
it.
board can decide whether or not we want to form a committee and how we're going to do it.
So, so if the board would like to, I think it ought to be done by the board to appoint a committee.
Okay.
So this would be a committee of the board. Yes,
committee of the
but now
board?
remember though, if you form a committee of the board, then the committee is subject to the requirements in force.
Okay, what
Correct.
the committee of the board is going to
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Clarify that. What's our role?
To be defined by the board.
Wait a minute. I'm lost because the
I
committee.
don't know what, so we
the committee
we
that I was
collectively
thinking-
as a board decide to form a committee. We can collectively agree, or in this case, argue about what composes
Right.
said board, and then we'll vote on it, and then it's done. It could
Doesn't-
be a
doesn't mean-
standing committee, it could be a temporary committee.
So you just
but we
want
do
2
that.
members of the board or 3 members of the board to be a part of this committee?
No,
Not
personally, I think
necessarily.
we'd be unjust not to have you there. I mean, you need to be there. Anybody that wants to be on
Oh,
the
I'm
There-
going to be there.
there's-
I know I'm going to be
So
there because
just-
I have to represent. I'm representing my district, okay? And I'm going to represent those people in District 2 that have also reached out to me. Someone have to be there for them. I will represent, and especially the students.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Pac. A committee of the board is basically at least 2 members of the board,
2.
plus other people as assigned, or is probably the best word. They can be community member, stakeholders,
No.
people from the school district, and it's something that we as a board would decide.
That's not where we wanted to go. We didn't want board members on that committee. We wanted
Ma'am,
that.
that's not where you want to go. We as a collective are going to make
But
that
we're
decision.
the ones going to make. We're the ones going to vote on it final.
We.
But we're going to do the final vote when they bring it back to us.
Maybe-
Okay,
maybe-
okay, all right, let me say my final word. You all can do what you want to do. You've already decided what you want to do, but my one vote still counts. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I continue?
Please.
Dr. Kramer, I respect everything that you said. I really do. This is a very simple policy if you break it down. I personally don't think a committee is needed for this. I was pretty much under the impression we were kind of working things out right here as we were speaking. And those 2 lines, those changes right there, you had no issues with the policy. Now, I did, and I apologize, I forgot one important aspect that I did add into it. I want to clarify that one. And it reads, the purpose of this policy shall not apply to standardized national or state assessments or instructional programs such as the ACT, SAT, NAEP, AP, or SOL. Would you have any issues with that?
Just a point of clarification on when you say SOL program, can you clarify that?
You mean as far as assessment or versus program?
Well, yes. I mean, if you say.
Certainly. Certainly that can be added.
I mean, SOL program is almost everything that we teach.
The way it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think if you go back to the 9 through 12 opt-in, and then you keep those assessments are not included in the policy, I think we're still safe.
Okay.
For the opt-out
9
piece.
12 opt-out.
Yes.
It does
Sorry.
state, and I know you don't have it, do you have it in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Because it does state instructional programs.
Yes.
So would you prefer different wording in that, or are you good with that one?
May I, Mr. Wooster?
Certainly.
I think Ms. Getz was trying to tell you that the inclusion of SOL would actually defeat the purpose of your policy, because SOL covers virtually everything that the school division does. Because standards of learning is not, because when, I think SOL has a term of arts to educators, and and the standards of learning is pretty much every curriculum that impact the school division. So I think it was just her polite way of trying to tell you that actually inclusion of SOL may actually defeat what you're trying to do. Okay. So
yes.
The removal of that?
And it actually would go against the Code of Virginia,
Okay.
which I don't want to do. So I think if we just stick to, Mr. Wooster, that opt-out, we are good.
Okay. And would you prefer to strike that whole line?
Probably, but I would want to look at it a little closer.
Okay. I'm just checking. Because honestly, again, this is a very simple policy. My goal, what I would like to see, is to come back next business meeting with a version, and Pac, I would have to ask you this, with a modified version, would that be a repeat of a first read at that point?
We're still on second read.
But it's a modified version.
I think at a certain point it's a matter of semantics, because I think it would just be an amendment of the existing thing. So I think it would just be wherever we are right currently. So it would come back basically for would it be a second read? Yeah, I think it would be a second read, because
read.
it continues to be, because it came to this board as a second read, the board tabled it, there
Right.
be some changes, so I think it still comes back as a second read. And now, obviously, if the board would like to table it further, the board can certainly do that as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
thank you.
our motion, we table it
It's
to
tabled.
January the 19th, 2023. That's why we should never put a date on a motion.
So what if we made a motion to bring it back for an additional work meeting? Because I think we're going to have additional working sessions for further discussion. Why put it up for a read at all? Let's just table it for an additional work session.
Mrs. Getz, do we need to table it? Are you comfortable that this is, Dr.
Please
Kramer?
May I interject
Yes,
here? So
Please.
let me say this. Yes, I would rather table this. And respectfully, Mr. Wooster, what I would say is, I hear you. I don't think that this is simple. I think there are lots of intricacies and nuance here, lots of complexities, and one decision will have an impact on another. I think voice is important. I think, Mrs. Getz is doing a more than admirable job, and she's representing and trying to reflect the voices of others. But in fact, it's difficult to do that while we're having real-time conversations. So we have one board member having a conversation with a school system representative, school division representative. I don't think that reflects the voice of our community. So that's where I would respectfully disagree with you, and would hope that we provide the community with an opportunity to have some input. And I don't think that this process is affording us that opportunity.
Okay. If we put it back on second read, and then we have a motion to table from there. that would be appropriate, I think.
Well, I think, may I jump in?
Yes.
Mr. Colick? I think if I remember correctly, I think Jessica may have to correct me, but I believe the board's vote last Thursday, was to table it to this work session.
Correct.
It's already up for second read. You don't need to do anything to that.
That's it.
So you would just table it again until.
Okay, we don't even have to include it on the agenda? That's,
No, because it's already, now, depending on when you want to table it until, you can table it until whenever.
right.
Yeah.
That's up to you all. Yeah, you can definitely, if you don't want to put time pressure on it, Mr. Marsh's suggestion to not put a date on it, that would give the board flexibility, then otherwise it's kind of awkward.
I'm
You have
talking
to do-
administratively, okay? How do we table it? It's tabled until today.
Mhm.
It's up for a second read. What do we put on the agenda? Because
Just
we're going to
table.
table again.
You
Or
just
do we
table.
just, do we have to put anything on the agenda?
No, if you table it again, it does not need to be on the agenda.
Good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All we have to
That
do,
works.
someone make a motion to table it again. We don't have to say, like we did last week and said, table it until January the 19th, 2023. Going forward, I would rather us not put a date on there.
Well, I would
Because
agree.
if something had come up and we couldn't have this meeting,
Yeah.
then, it was out. Just
I would
say,
agree.
we'll table it until we meet again on this item. So we don't have to put it on the agenda for next month. We'll put it on the agenda when Dr. Kramer come back and say, hey, we have something for you, we're ready, and they'll put it on the agenda.
Okay, does anybody have any more comments?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and Mrs. Getz, this will really be for you, I think, because we have collectively decided, I think, to remove the inherently divisive from the IIA policy. I'd still like to capture that somehow, some kind of way, and that is challenging, there's no doubt. Constituent sent me what you're looking at up on the screen, and I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting. Uh-oh. Ooh, got it. Okay, so IIA cross-references policy INB. And so this is not the current version, this is an adjusted version. I would ask you, if Dr. Kramer, if your staff could look at this and look if there's any holes in it. I think INB captures most, if not all, of what we were trying to do with the inherently divisive concepts. So I can read it if you want to hear it read out loud, but we're all looking at it.
You said a constituent sent this to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you mind giving the name?
I do not. Mr. Lewis Edmonds.
Okay. Mr. Rooster, I have a question for you too. The reversions, did you actually do them yourself or did you have some assistance?
The revision currently that we're talking
The
about.
first one and the second one?
Yes, I did this.
Okay.
So I think it's, for the sake of getting it off my chest, hindsight being what it is, I think collectively we probably could have done a much better job of approaching this task as a whole. New board, growing pains, no doubt. To me, that's obviously painful. There's some growing pains on how we're going to work as a board and with the staff. So, we'll work through it. We'll get through it. But if you would, and if the board agrees, I'd request that you take a look at, I'll send this to you, take a look at this and see if you think and your staff thinks it meets the spirit and intent of what we're trying to accomplish. You've seen my KLB. You know how I personally define inherently divisive content. I don't want anyone labeling and categorizing children based off their skin color, their sexual orientation. That's the bare bones of it. And we could get into the details, but I don't see the point. We can call it whatever we want. That's what I think this captures. And I give nothing but kudos to Mr. Edmonds for sitting down and sending this to me. I think he did a heck of a job. So.
Well, let me say this. Mr. Marsh, thank you for what you just did, because you shared that with us, and you also told us, who you got it from. That's the only thing I would have wished had happened at our previous meeting. not from you, that if there were any changes in what was put in place in November, come to the meeting just like you just came. You got this from a constituent. Can we sit down and discuss this? But this was thrown at us, and this is what happened. The public found it. People in the public had it before the board got to even discuss it. And it put us in some kind of place, and I don't like to be there.
Well, to my own admission, I just said that we could have done this better.
Yeah, you
And
did
so-
say that. That's
I
why,
did.
and I'm trying to.
And for the record, I mean, Mr. Wooster tried to put it on the agenda, and it got thrown in.
Because when
At
he
the
brought,
onset.
because when he brought it to to be put on the agenda, it was pretty much late because we had the agenda in place. But we did not throw it out. When he brought it, we added to the agenda that night. We had 3 items to be added. Am I correct, clerk? And his was the 4th one. So we didn't throw it out, we added. It's just how you add things to the agenda once the agenda has been put out there to the public.
And we no doubt will learn from our mistakes.
We amended the agenda that night and added that policy, which came back as policy what? December, it was policy 1, January, policy 2. So we didn't throw it out. It's just
It got thrown on at the beginning of the meeting. It got thrown in. So it really wasn't a first read. We put it on the agenda, and the first time the public ever saw it was during the meeting, or actually it was a couple days after the meeting, because it wasn't provided for public view ahead of the meeting.
And see, this is what Dr. Kramer was trying to tell us, as well as his staff. It wasn't out there for the public to view. This is why we could have waited. We could have presented this better. And going forward, all of our policies, we put them out there, first read. First read gives everybody at least 30 days to read it. That's everyone. And when we come back for second read, that's the opportunity for the board to discuss it during that second read meeting. And if there's any staff, any public here, they can come up during the agenda time and discuss it with us as well, voice their opinion. That's how it's done. That particular policy did not happen like that night. It was first read was that night. The next night it was second read. So, it is what it is. That's spilt milk, let it go. That's in the past.
Yes, ma'am. And listen, these are homegrown policies. Like I don't claim to be a policy writer. These are not a rubber stamped version of what the VSBA provided. We developed these internally. Mr. Wooster sat down and came up with that all on his own. So, we'll work through it. We're going to get better. But I think moving forward, tonight we've got enough to make some progress in the right direction.
Yep. Anybody else?
As far as the policy I at the previous meetings being placed on first read when it was, when the agenda was modified and it was placed on there, Attorney Pack, could you just repeat what you clarified that evening as far as placing that policy for first read?
The first time that you brought it up?
Correct.
What I said that evening was when Mr. Wooster introduced it to be a first read, it properly could be a first read as it was introduced by the board.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chair, I think the board has to vote on tabling the
We
policy
can't
item.
vote during a work meeting. I don't believe we can vote during a work session.
Well, it's tabled anyway, so it's still
Yeah,
tabled. And when we bring it back to our regular meeting, it's tabled,
Right.
okay? We don't have to vote on it tonight. It's tabled. This is an item. But the issue is, the last motion, and I think I know where Pack is coming from, it was a motion made to table it until we had this meeting tonight, this evening. So therefore, it should not be tabled past that date because a date was attached to it. So that's where he's coming from. Pat, can we make a motion on this to table it again without a date?
I think the board is not voting on any public matter. I mean, it's not, this is, well, one, I think it's fine to have a vote at a work session. I don't think that there's anything that against the law on that, but in this case, Ms. Tynes is correct that my only reservation was that when the board voted to table this policy, it set a limit on itself. So it makes more sense, it may make sense to take a vote on just extending the time to be TBD as Mr. March suggested.
We're back in session. Can I have a motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I move to table policy IIA for further discussion for a time to be determined in the future.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Take a vote.
Mr. Wooster?
Nay.
Mr. Colick?
Yay.
Mr. Marsh?
Yay.
Mrs. Tynes?
Yay.
Motion is passed. We are adjourned.